Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. How are you all doing? I'm excited. Who we got? Chris and Maggie. They're both here in the lobby. I'm very excited about this one. Did you catch yesterday's interview with Bridget Belton? I've gotten lots of really nice comments about it. Some people are saying, hey, nice to get to know you, Bridget. And even someone said, hey, look, this changed my opinion on her because I didn't get a chance to know her. Only knew her from the POEC. I thought it was a really cool interview, having her in a truck like that, talking about life, like we were old friends, just chatting away. She's a nice lady. And she's even got her hoodies out and her T-shirts. So go check her Twitter and stuff. I'm sure she'll give you information on that. But I ordered one. Actually, we got a couple. One for the wife, too. It's been a good day, though. And I got to get you on Twitter, John. John, if you're listening to this episode, I got to get you on Twitter. It's the best way to just stay connected. Even if I'm just the only person you talk to, at least I can get the information to you. But I got to get you on Twitter there, John. So I'm going to get you there one day. And yeah, it's been a really excellent day over here. The weather's good. It's decent. No major storms this time. You know, sometimes we have these interviews and tornado warning, flood warning, wildfire. But no, today's going to be a decent Friday. We are expected to run long because there is 2 interviews really going on here today. So we are expected to run long, about 2.5, 3 hours, maybe even 3 hours. We'll see how it goes. Both our guests are giving up their time, so we're going to respect it. But they do have stories to share, and I'm really excited about that. If you did see them during the POEC, what you saw there was their testimony, okay? And some of their story, but their testimony. We got to hear a little bit about who Chris is, and then we got into his incident. Got to hear a little bit about who Maggie is, and we got into her incident. But today what we're going to do is fill in some of the gaps. A little bit more of the stories of where they come from, what they've been through, and some of the stuff that just didn't come up during the POEC. Because we like to learn who they are. Now, we've seen them as witnesses, but now we're going to learn who they are as people. And I'm pretty excited about that. I do have a correction, though. For all my watchers of the morning show, we had Rick Abbott on a couple days ago. And this black pill, red pill, blue pill, purple pill, all this pill stuff got a little bit confusing, and we got it wrong. It turns out the black pill is not the good one. That's the one that has no hope. This is according to Michael Malice. So I'm going to go with that definition, which means we're not on the black pill because we have lots of hope. In fact, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take Rick's advice and just stop referring to pills altogether and just say you have hope that the system can be repaired and worked on. So I just wanted to clarify that because I had a few people reach out to me and say, hey, look, I think you got the black pill thing wrong. And we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be getting things wrong. So some of the confusion was in the past, you know, people had different interpretations of it. But we'll go with the Michael Malice interpretation of it. And we'll go with the Rick Abbott idea of just dropping it. We don't need to be pilled. We are hopeful, but we're also skeptic. But on that note, I have them both there. I have a wicked background for Maggie. She's got nature behind her. We got Chris. He had a halo effect going. We got rid of it just because we want to see his face. And now we're going to get ready to bring them in. Hello, Chris. And hello, Maggie. Oh, I got you right on your hat. I got you right when you were doing the hat. I'm getting famous for that right at the right time. How are you doing, Chris?
Pretty good yourself?
I'm really good. I'm really good. And I do like the hat. You want to show us what you got on there?
It's a Jeff Eagley hat. It's the lest we forget with the lest crossed out, as the Legion has forgotten. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And hi, Maggie. How are you doing? And we had a quick little chat with you. No more bombs today?
No more bombs today.
Oh, your audio sounds good right now, by the way. So that was a good thing. Yeah. And yeah, for those that were watching a Canada Day special, we went and connected with you. We first saw you in your living room, and it was a nice little backdrop you had. And then all of a sudden, we saw police vehicles in the front yard where you're showing us that, yeah, they showed up because you had a bit of a scare there. Now, do you think that was for you, or it was just something going on in the neighborhood?
Well, I spoke at my town council on Monday, and
that's right.
That video went viral. I was laying out how the UN has taken over our municipalities since 1992, and I gave all the background information. And I think it got to about 100,000 views. And I went outside to get my camper ready for Canada Day and said, what's going on here? And there was a bomb squad right outside my door. And it was just a little bomb, and they took care of it. But I haven't really heard any details on why that happened. I did go over and speak to the police, and yeah, I didn't get that many details. And the other thing that happened is I started a newsletter, and it was deplatformed within a month.
Oh, wow.
Starting it, so I have to restart my project, but that's okay. I have all the patience in the world, apparently, or I'm supposed to.
Absolutely. For sure. And we're going to help you there. Like if you need to get platformed or you want to do video or podcast or something, let's help you on that one, because you're doing some great work over where you're at. I saw your video, and yeah, you're a speaker, you're an advocate, and you're doing great work. And that Agenda 2030 is very, very real. So yeah, I'll go check my front lawn after this and see if I got a package too, because yeah, that's very real. Now, Chris, you don't take bombs seriously. You've actually been involved with, and you actually fully understand this subject.
I've been blown up a few times, yeah.
Yeah, a few times. Wow. Do you want to start with that photo you sent me and let everybody see what we're talking about? Maybe we can get into that story if you want.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Sure. And while I'm getting that ready, why don't you go ahead and tell us how come you got started in... Oh, by the way, thank you very much for your service. God bless you. And can you let us know what made you get into the service?
Well, for me, it was just I didn't really know what to do. I was going to university at the time, and it wasn't for me. I spent 6 months at college or at university. Knew it wasn't for me, so I initially jumped out. I joined the military. I joined up in 2007. I was deployed in 2008. So it was a very, very quick span. The photo that you're putting up right now, that's the crater that what the bomb left after it exploded underneath my vehicle.
Is that 15 feet or so? Like how deep is that? It looks like 15 feet or so.
Yeah, probably about that. I'm not sure how wide, probably 40 or 50 feet or something. Not sure.
Oh my goodness. And your vehicle was over top. This is the full explosion. And this is where your vehicle went 100 feet in the air.
Yeah. So I was in the lead convoy. I was the first vehicle. And it was just, I think it was 8 a.m. And I have to tell everyone that everything I'm telling anyone now today has been retold to me because I have no recollection of anything. So pretty much it's just what other people have told me is what happened.
Right, it has to be relayed to you.
Right, yeah. So we were heading out one day, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and is the busy spot down, I believe it was South Panjway, pretty hostile area, and they lined us up, and it was a pole detonator IED, so it was a little cord attached to the bomb 2 kilometers off to the mountains. And as soon as we came up, they lined us up, they pulled the det, and it exploded. It lifted my 30-ton vehicle right up into the air about 100 meters or 100 feet. It did a complete flip, and as it flipped, the gun is on a swivel. It's not actually connected to the vehicle, so it just the gun fell out, and then I happened to fall out, and then the tank or the lav fell as well. So I was between the gun and the lav. So just due to my size and due to the positioning and luck and everything, I just luckily made it out. And the 3 other guys with me, they didn't. But yeah.
I'm so sorry about that, brother. I'm so sorry. Now, the recovery, of course, took some time. And what happened right after that? Did they take you out of Afghanistan, or what happened?
Yeah, so they flew me originally, I think it was to Bagram. It's about an hour away, to stabilize me. When they had found me, it was pretty assumed that I was dead, with the condition I was in. But they picked me up, they hauled me away, they stabilized me in Bagram. Then they flew me to Landstuhl in Germany. I was there for 2 weeks, 8 or 9 days of which I was in a coma, induced. And then, sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no problem. So you're in Germany. Yep.
Yeah, I came back. I left Germany. I was flown to St. John, close to my mom and dad's. When I left the St. John Hospital, I recuperated at my mom and dad's for probably a few months. I was walking within 4 or 5 months. So I recovered pretty fast, but I was in very good shape.
Yeah, you started in good shape. So yeah, your recovery was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then after the 4 or 5 months, you start walking, you're still dealing with pain and other problems?
Yeah, and then I reintegrate into the base. I did an extra 8 years in the military. Tried to get back into the infantry. I tried to deploy again. Didn't work out. My body wasn't really having it. And then 2017, I medically released.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for your service on that one. And how are you feeling today? I know it's day by day, but today is
It's
one of
day
the
by
good
day,
days.
but really, like, if you don't think about your pain, and if you just, you know, a lot of it's mental, right? So if you're thinking you're in pain, you're in pain, you're in pain, you're in pain. But for me, I don't talk about pain. It's just, it is what it is. And for the most part, I get by.
Excellent. So now
I have a great wife. My family's great. So
yeah, we'll get into your family as well at one point very soon. What we're going to do is we'll bring Maggie on now and kind of get to know her as well. We'll get off this pain topic. So Maggie, you have been an activist and you've been working hard prior to this whole convoy thing. Can you kind of let us know what got you into that? Was there an event? Was there a particular cause? Or you just felt like doing something one day and that was the thing you did?
My parents always worked overseas, and I grew up the first 4 years of my life in a jungle village environment and a good sense of community. And so those formative years, I think, really shape a person. Coming back to Canada, my dad, I have a vivid memory of him saying that I would love Canada and it's a place of freedom and democracy. So I always wondered what that meant. And when I arrived in Canada, it was in the 80s and there was a lot of smog still in the air. That's been cleaned up a lot since. The highways were littered. That's been cleaned up since. And just I think it broke my heart being tugged past the first homeless person. And I thought that there was something wrong. There's something wrong with the country. And that we'd lost our sense of community and kindness towards our fellow human being, to a sense here. But I always loved growing up in Canada. I lived in cottage country. I had a good childhood. I traveled a lot to the Caribbean. And I always was concerned about the environment. I think it was that first initial experience when I was younger. So I kind of was aiming towards working for the UN one day, and specifically going for the environmental issues. So I went to college for ecosystem management. And while I was there, I really researched heavily into climate change, and it didn't take me long to see that the data being used and the models being used and was being blown out of proportion, and that there was a lot of science that wasn't being taken into consideration. And then from there, I started really questioning why the UN and the international organizations were pushing so hard on this. And I started to see the agreements being made, and then our country following suit with legislation that reduced our sovereignty and our rights. So that had always been a concern for me. And I, at the same time, was seeing that our legal system and our monetary system was also being turned against the people. And then I had my son about 13 years ago and had an issue with his vaccinations, and the doctors, they gaslit the wrong mom in the hospital that day.
And these are not COVID vaccinations. These are just other vaccinations.
No. Yeah. And it was just a simple reaction, a rash. And I brought him in for his first one. He had a little rash. And I didn't freak out. I took note. But then the second one, I brought him in, and he had a rash all over his body when I brought him home. So I thought, okay, this is serious. I'll bring him to the hospital. And I brought him in, and they all said it wasn't from the vaccine, but it was listed as a potential reaction. And after that, I could handle so much corruption, but when you mess with children, that's a different story. And so I ran in the federal election in 2011 for the Canadian Action Party. Yeah, and that party is about it no longer exists, but it was created by Paul Hellyer, and it was very pro-sovereignty, pro-civil rights, monetary reform, pretty much everything I stood for. And I took advantage of an opportunity to get that message out. And after that, I basically homesteaded and homeschooled for the last 12 years.
Yes.
And then I moved to Peterborough, so I was close to the convoy. A lot of friends being affected out in British Columbia by the COVID mandates. And like I said during the inquiry, I felt it was my duty to go on behalf of not just myself, but everyone that I knew that was being affected. And that something had to be, we had to have people on the ground, and I met the most amazing people there. And since then, and I'm so glad, because it really brought us all together, and now we can all work together to transform the country. Whereas before we were working as individuals, and there's a lot of good partnerships being formed now. So
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you, did you send your resume to the UN? Because it sounds like you weren't too interested anymore.
No. I'm going to start my own.
Yeah, you're going to start your own, because you did what everybody should do, and follow the information and follow the data, and it brought you to a point where most people don't go when they go through that system.
Yes.
So that's pretty good. And then Chris, did you do education as well? So in addition to working in the military service, what were you doing with your education?
Sorry, can you say it again? You kind of cut out.
No problem. How about you for education? Did you follow any paths with your education, or was it your service that you focused on?
Yeah, so I finished high school in 2005, I believe it was, or 06, I forget. And then like I said, I went to university for 6 months. My mom and dad are both teachers,
Right.
and they kind of encouraged me to go to school, and I tried it. I wouldn't say I really tried it, because I really didn't, but I went. So 4 or 5 months after that, I kind of knew it wasn't my kind of thing, and I joined the military with big ambitions. I thought, well, I'll jump in and we'll see what happens. And in less than 2 years, I was in Afghanistan, which is pretty quick.
Did you do cadets at all? Did Army or Sea or anything like that?
Nope. I wrestled for like 10 or 12 years. That was my.
Oh, really?
That was my passion. Yeah.
Like provincially level or something like that? Like, did you go with it?
I went to the Canada Games. I was second, and I went to the Pan American Games. And I was second, and I was maybe 7 or 8 times national champion.
All right. Who was first those 2 times? They got to be huge, right? Do you still know who that was? Are they still around?
Oh, I forget, to be honest.
Oh, fair enough. It wasn't Hulk Hogan or something like that. That's really neat. So you were 7 or 8 times champion, you said?
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. And then that you did that before you went to the service, or while you were doing it as well?
Yeah, that was before. So it was in middle school, high school, and I did some in university as well. I mean, that's also additionally why I went to university. I got a scholarship as well to do that. But
Okay.
I was finished the competitiveness. I didn't like it. I just want to move on.
Right. And so everybody knows this is more like the Olympic style of wrestling, not the WWE style.
Yes.
Right. Okay, cool. And what else do you do for recreation, for fun? Are you into guns? Are you into anything else like that?
Honestly, I'm just a family man, to be honest. I just love staying home and spend time with my kids. I think I told you a little bit ago, we're selling our house right now. We're moving to the woods. So we're selling our 4,000 square foot home here, and then we're moving to a cabin in the woods, a 600 square foot off-grid cabin, and we're going to do some homeschool. I don't like calling it homeschooling. Just we'll keep the kids home, and we'll farm. We're going to start networking and just live off the land and get back to what we used to do.
That's amazing. That's what we do too. So we're homesteaders, homeschooling as well. We sold everything in Eastern Ontario, set up in Alberta. And yeah, I have Starlink and solar. There's no wires out here, so I can't get any other type of internet or electricity. But we love it. We absolutely love it. We've done 2 winters here now. It gets cold in central Alberta, but there's a lot of wood and we can handle this just fine. And that's awesome. Now, you're in the process of moving. So did you find your place? You know where you're going to?
We do. We're moving up north. I'm not going to let anyone know where we're going, but up north anyways. No. Yeah.
Yeah, that way. That's all they need to know. Yeah. You don't even need to know what province you're going to.
The place we're moving to has no civic address, so it's perfect.
Well, that's the only one place left. You just doxed yourself. We just have to look for the non-civic address. But that's cool. So how many children do you have? And tell us a little bit about your wife and children.
Yeah, so I have 2 kids, Ellie and Lexi. They're 7 and 5.5. My wife V is a stay-at-home mom. We're just home all the time together. We go on road trips. We go on little vacations. We just do things together. And like our thought process is that like, so we had our oldest go to school for the first half year when the pandemic was going on, and we just I couldn't allow my child to sit there with a mask on if I couldn't do the same. And so we ended up pulling her home, and we just feel that at the end of the day, like if you can teach your kids to read and to be good people, they can learn whatever they want.
Right.
It's very easy. It's great.
So are you staying home with the kids, or the wife staying home with the kids, or you both are?
We both do.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. And then you're going to be doing the gardening stuff when you set up?
Yeah, so once we move, we're gonna get into the farming and get a greenhouse and start doing that. And we want to start a network within New Brunswick and a little bit of Ontario as well. We have a bunch of like-minded friends that we've met since the convoy, and it's been great. So we want to keep those networks going and just keep building. Yeah,
one of the best things to do is know your neighbors and set up a micro community. Yeah. So you'll handle some things, they'll handle some things, and if you need to, you can rely on each other. Exactly. There's a lot of that out here in Alberta, little micro communities. It's a great way to be. And then how about you, Maggie? You're doing something similar, right? You're not quite, you are on the grid, but you're still doing some stuff similar?
Yeah, my life has changed quite a bit. So whereas I spent, like I said, the last 12 years homesteading, gardening, homeschooling. It's been 1 year since I kind of started another chapter in my life. So we've gone through a bit of a separation, and so the last year I was really focused on just getting myself reestablished into a new home, setting up a couple businesses, and just taking some time for self-care and healing. And then the inquiry happened, and life took another turn and became very busy, which is good because good in some ways, because it's really following my life purpose and the path that I feel I was meant to be on for a long time. And obviously I wish I had, a partner and the support of that, but it's sometimes easier to do it on your own, and you have a bit more control over your own life.
Sure. There's a transition period here.
Yeah. And I think for me, with the government exerting so much control during COVID, that really just put the pressure on everything else. And I couldn't maintain my level of patience for certain things. And anyway, so this has been a big transitionary year. I put my children in a private Christian school for the year. They're 13 and 10. So it was a good year for them to go into something else and allow me to have a little bit more time to get my own life in order again. So
it sounds like a deep breath is what you need to just kind of reset. Yeah. And now you got a bud. Chris is also going to probably bug you for some homesteading advice and maybe some garden advice, because you're like-minded and you understand this stuff.
Well, it sounds like he has the homeschooling stuff down right. It's absolutely true. If the children learn to read, and you really don't even have to force that, they will learn what they need to learn. And having their parents to interact with as opposed to the peers is much better for their character. And so there's one of the projects I'm working on has to do with sharing the knowledge I have with homeschooling, because I spent a lot of time researching that and really came to the conclusion that we don't need all of this extra curriculum, and we don't need to spend a whole bunch of money on that. That comes down to teaching them to be part of the household, part of the family firm, have their duties and responsibilities, and also give them life experiences, teach them character, and the educational piece, to kind of go back to a model of true education like we saw in the 1800s, because they've been dumbing us down for the last century. And you just have to read the writings from the 1800s to see that we're not being educated, and there's a lot of stuff that they're not teaching us, and that's why we're in this situation. So
Well, maybe you can write a book about climate change truth for homeschoolers, because you know that subject quite well. And that's a subject we have to teach, the truth about that kind of stuff. That might be an interesting book. Okay, so you guys kind of have resets going on, both of you, or restarts going on here. Chris is selling everything and moving into some unknown location. Only CSIS will know. Nobody else will know. And Maggie is resetting and restarting, got the kids at a private school, taking a big, deep breath and getting the next chapter going. So I think we caught you both at a really good time to kind of see where your life is and where you're going to go with that. So I think this is going to be an excellent interview. So I'm going to go to Chris now. I'm going to start to get us into what's got you at the events in the convoy. And I'm sorry that we're going to have to be going through some of what actually happened to you. So if you need to take a break or anything like that, just give me the heads up. That's cool. I can always jump to Maggie and continue. But yeah, I do want to take you into the events that took you to the convoy. So probably like the rest of us, you heard about it on news of some sort. So why don't you try and take me back to the first time you heard about the convoy, whether it was already there or coming, and what got your attention?
Sure. I'd say the first time we've been on social media like everyone else. We didn't go out for the first 2 weeks. We did make our way the third weekend, I believe it was. My wife and I, we just wanted to see, because we watched the news, right? And we watched social media and it was all conflicting. We thought, well, we want to at least go see ourselves so we can get a good view and a factual view for ourselves. And we went down, I forget the date, but it was the weekend that the veterans took down the fence around the memorial. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first instance being down, which was a great day. That was when Brian Marr, he brokered a deal with the police to take down the fence and have us man it 24/7. I mean, the government putting that fence up was just outrageously disgusting. It was an insult.
Yeah.
So that was my first instance. It was we stayed for 2 nights. We went up with 2 friends, and then we quickly went back. I think it was, I forget the timeline, but a few days after, maybe like a week after. So when the Emergencies Act was getting called, we were at home. My wife and I were at home, and we were watching the voting in the House of Commons, and couldn't believe it passed. And I thought, I have to go back. I have to go back to Ottawa. So the next day, and I forget, it was the 16th or 17th or whenever it was, and I rushed up that day. I left the house at 5 a.m. I got up there. I think it was the 17th that night. I went to the memorial. Went there it was like that was the congregation spot, so all the veterans knew that's the place to meet, right? So we show up there, we chat. So I showed up there on the 17th, and I chatted with a guy named Chris Ivey, someone I had met for 2 seconds, and I always forget to leave this guy to my story, and I shouldn't, because the following day when I needed someone to pick me up, this guy was the only contact I had. I called him up. He picked me and the other guys up, drove us home. He put me up in his house for a couple of nights. Just outstanding Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my sorry, and so the fence of the first weekend, and then sorry, my train of thought is just all over the place.
No problem. You went back on the 17th. This guy gave you a ride. You stayed there for a couple of days. You were hanging out at the memorial with the rest of the vets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, what also pushed me to go to Ottawa was just the over the 2.5 years of just the nonsensical. If you have a brain or you can have any kind of critical thinking, you know, when they're telling you vitamin D is bad for you or not good, it should be obvious, right?
Right.
And there was a point. So every year after my accident, every year on the day, I would go to Nova Scotia,
mm-hmm.
and there's 2 of my brothers that are buried in Nova Scotia. The one's in Newfoundland. So every year after my accident, on the anniversary day, I would go lay flowers, drink a beer, and say a few words. 11 or 12 years or 13 years after that, and then the pandemic happened, and for some reason, I couldn't be in my own vehicle by myself to cross a border alone to a cemetery with no one but dead people.
Right.
And that was the moment that it crushed me, right? I couldn't go and grieve, which I've done for the past 12 or 13 years, and it was the one day I needed.
Yes. You needed to be there. And this was for the people who are just following the story now. There was a bubble around the Maritimes where they're making it difficult for people to come into the Maritimes at all. So yeah. This is what you ran into. You were trying to drive there and they stopped you and wouldn't let you in.
Yeah.
And they gave you no options. Like you could come back later with something or a piece of, no, they just said go home.
I was making phone calls all over the province. I was getting in touch with military and provincial. I couldn't get in touch with anyone. There was no one I could get in touch with that would let me cross. No one.
I'm sorry that you missed that. Did you end up going back the next year?
I haven't been back since. Don't know what it is. Just I got to get back there soon. But we've been nonstop busy. And
when is your anniversary for this?
I got to get back. It's December 13th.
December 13th. Well,
yeah,
we got lots of friends. We got lots of friends, right? Let's make sure we get you there. You got to go back. Got to get you back there.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you were discovering pretty early that agenda, narrative, things were really wonky. You ran into a physical problem where you couldn't go and do your memorial routine, and so now you're upset with what's going on here in Canada. This is not normal for you. So this is what kind of highlighted to you that you needed to be more active. And this was just before the convoy then, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So December. So now in January, the convoy is being talked about. It's starting to move. End of January, it shows up in Ottawa. And you didn't go for the first couple of weeks, but you went on the third week. So that means you were there just before the EA dropped the first time.
Yeah.
So you were helping, right? Then you went home. EA drops. You start to come back. Now I'm going to move to Maggie so we can get her brought up to this part of the timeline as well. So Maggie, you're going on with life. You're doing your thing. And when did you first hear about this convoy? Did you hear about it as it's rolling around or after it got to Ottawa? When did you first hear about the convoy?
Yeah, I heard about it. Social media. I can't place exactly when or where, but as it started coming across the country, it was pretty exciting to see the amount of people coming out. And I just knew I had to be part of it. I started getting really excited and asking, are we going to go? Are we going to go? And basically just got myself ready to go. And I guess for me, it was a Remembrance Day before that.
Okay.
We had spent the whole summer up north working on different community projects, people who had moved up north, and a lot of people that I know have kind of been seeing what was coming for a long time. So
right, because you've been in the agenda stuff for quite some time. So
yeah, we saw what was coming, and I remember one day I was up there, and the Toronto Star article came out, and on the front page it was like, we have zero empathy for the unvaccinated. I hope they die. And and then the Remembrance Day that followed, hearing Trudeau give his speech that, we'll never let this happen again. And then I did a comparison for myself of the legislation they passed in Germany versus how they were doing it here. And it was almost a parallel of how they were doing it. And so going into that winter, all I wanted to do was leave Canada. And the travel restrictions, I'm a problem solver. I could not find a way to get me and my family out of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so I normally have a lot of routines in place to make sure that my mental health is very, is good. And that January, I could feel it slipping. And a lot of people did. It was like such a darkness at that time because, the second week of January, I think, is the darkest, hardest time for
correct
people in the North. I think that statistically, that's when people, are most likely to end their life and be depressed. Yes. And so I remember mentioning it to my close circle, like, I'm not doing well. And then the convoy happened. So it gave me such a boost. Okay, I'm going to do something. And
it was exciting. So you weren't scared of all the white races coming from the West then?
Not at all. No.
No, because there's a bunch of us that were called racist and misogynist and stuff. You weren't worried about us making our way there?
So I've been seeing through the way that the media portrays things for a long time, and I can pretty much spot their lies really quickly.
They're talking.
Yeah. Yes.
That's how you know they're lying. They're talking.
Yes.
So you didn't believe any of that hype at all. You knew from the very beginning, this is something special, and this is something that feels good.
Yeah.
Especially when you saw the flags on the road and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I was so proud to be Canadian, seeing that happen. And I went to the overpass near my town, and there was such a great energy there. And I got to see some of the local people that I didn't know were like-minded at that time. So that was good. You know, we became closer friends after that. And the night before I left, it was the second weekend. I will say, I saw a Toronto Star article again, of course, and I was so disturbed at how they were portraying it. And they made a statement in there about, we haven't gotten a number from the police on how many additional rapes have taken place in the city. And I thought, wow, they are going too far. And
do they try to say unvaccinated are raping people? Like, that's where the head with that?
That's it. It was just the propaganda they were putting out, the psychological fear mongering to keep people from going. And I won't say I hesitated, but I thought they're going to take this really far if they're willing to say this kind of stuff. And but we went, and I went with a girlfriend from college. And we had a great time, and we were treated like very well by everyone, by the men, obviously, you know, everyone.
Yeah, you felt
absolutely
very comfortable.
And so I'm not
so
sure.
Now you're at the event, but you're there before things are getting crazy, like this from February 14th and on. So before the EA drop, you were there and enjoying yourself, having some free food, listening to music, seeing lots of flags. I bet you didn't see many Nazi flags or anything like that.
Not at all. I did see, I'm pretty good at reading a crowd and seeing who's comfortable. And there were people coming in, and they were just coming to observe, and I could spot them, and I would go up and talk to them and welcome them to the space and help them to feel comfortable. And they ended up like taking off their masks and, you know, joining us. So I had a lot of fun with that. I found myself again while I was there, and that like inner organizer and communicator and person that, you know, can enjoy a crowd. So it was good, and be independent at the same time, because after that I went back by myself for the rest of the time and just met great people. So
all right. So how many times did you go back during this part?
So I went down that first weekend, and then the next weekend I went back with a group from Peterborough here. And then I came back the next Wednesday, the Valentine's Day, when they announced the Emergency Act, and stayed until the end. So
okay, so at that point you were deciding to stay. Now, were you resisting, or that was your plan all along, was to stay for a little bit longer?
Oh, I stayed even afterward. I went to Arnprior for the week following, and we set up our camp, and people were coming from all across the country still, because they were coming and they didn't stop coming. So we all had a big camp in Arnprior and other camps, and continued to meet all these beautiful people from across the country. So
yeah, and you're standing shoulder to shoulder with them all, and you went back. So now I'm going to jump to Chris, and we're going to start talking about the day that the police are starting to come in. So Chris, so now you're back there. You've done the memorial thing. It came down. You're hanging out with this cool guy that you met who let you stay for a couple of days. The EA drops, and you guys are hanging around. Now, did you think when you heard the news that they were going to drop the EA that they were going to get violent, or did you think that maybe this was still going to be adversarial a bit, but maybe we could work our way through this? What were you thinking when you heard about that news?
Well, among the veteran community, I talked to a few people, and pretty much the consensus was 96% sure that the police were going to go down, bust skulls, and clean it up. Okay. So there was a small percentage that I was going there thinking, you never know, maybe some police do stand up and walk away, and then maybe others follow suit. There's a small chance. But for
So
the
it has
most part,
happened around the world. Some
yeah,
places they've done that. The police did the right thing.
yeah. But I mean, for the most part, when we see them lined up, it was 12:25, and must have been 4,000 or 5,000 police. It was ridiculous. They were outfitted to finish it up that weekend. It was pretty obvious.
Now, did you see any tactical things like as a military event? Did you see them doing things like getting ready from one side, another side? Did you see them like kettling or anything like that? Like tactically, did you see anything happening like on the field?
Nothing that I could really put to be honest. I mean, my time in the military was pretty limited with my time in. But I mean, honestly, I was just standing there with the people, and I went there with a mission, and my mission was to get my ass kicked because I wanted to go to show the Canadian people what the police are willing to do, and if they're willing to beat me. And I'm going to preface this as well. I'm going to list my injuries. So for those
Please
that
do.
don't know, so after when I was bombed, I broke my foot. My foot was facing the other way when my friend found me. My ankle was broken. My hip was broken. 35% of my back was broken. I damaged both my lungs, my kidneys. I sustained a traumatic brain injury. I sustained PTSD. When I was sitting in the tank, when the lab, sorry, my face, I was looking into a scope, right? So my right eye kind of got crushed into the scope, which is all metal and steel. So my nose and my eye and everything, my cheekbone was all crushed. What else did I do? Hearing loss, tinnitus, whatever. But like I get pretty banged up. So when I was at the convoy, I was telling the police, and I was conversing with them. I had about 20 to 30 minutes, and I was conversing with each one of them. And each one I made known. I said, "Listen, I got blown up in Afghanistan. If you happen to arrest me, you don't need to, violently beat me. Just arrest me and be done with it." So, yeah.
Yeah, so you let them know ahead of time. I even think you mentioned in the POEC that you let them know that you had some medication for pain relief. And you were really, yeah, so you were there letting them know what your situation was because you were concerned they may take it too far. You understood you were going to be maybe rough handled a bit or arrested. You understood that. You were there for that. But you also let them know that, look, you don't need to, I'm not going to resist. I'm not going to fight you. You don't have to be rough with me. You kind of talk to them ahead of time.
Yeah, and I also forgot.
Yeah. Now, were you making contact with them? Were they saying like, yeah, okay, we understand, or were they just kind of staring through you?
It was 50-50. Something like I had two police officers. One, Mr. Jung Kim, he shouldn't have been there, and he told me he was one of the people that I thought if anyone's gonna get up and walk away, it's this person. Or like there was a few. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but the consensus was going against it, and there was too much pressure against them, and they didn't have enough. They didn't have the fortitude to stand up and say, "No, this is not right." They're weak, and so that's why I will take my time and I will get to that. The policeman who beat me, I'm going to criminally charge him. I'll get after him. If it takes me 10 years, I don't care. We need accountability.
Right. Well, we have private prosecutions and other things available to you. So if you want to follow through with that, we can help you with that. I just wanted to let you know, we interviewed a gentleman named Rick Abbott. He was a staff sergeant for the Edmonton Police Services, and he took us through this incredible story about how the police service itself was cracking down on officers and getting them to comply, all the way to 99, 100% compliance, all the way to shaming them and making them eat in a room called the shame room if they wouldn't comply. So even on the police level, there was a lot of brainwashing and indoctrination going on. So I can understand that this one officer who didn't feel comfortable with what was going on, I can understand why they were still there. They saw colleagues being fired. They saw a lot of other people having trouble. But I'm glad you got names.
Yeah, they were afraid of their promotions, paychecks, and what else is it? Pensions, yeah.
Right. The PPP. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying what they're doing is right. I'm just saying this is where they were at and this is what was going on. And I'm sure if you remember the OPS, Ottawa Police Services, let go 20% of their police force because they wouldn't fax. So you were left with all the ones that were highly compliant with their senior command.
Which is not what you want.
No, not if you want. 100%, but they got the critical thinkers out, and I think that's part of the design. And Maggie knows this. She knows that this is part of the design. You get the free thinkers out, and you're left with the robots. She understands this one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back to Maggie and see what got her up to that point where she's now facing the police officers, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll do your video and take it from there, if you don't mind. So Maggie, you were hanging out, and it was party time. You're having a good time. The EA drops. did you, as Chris just explained, he understood that it might get rough, and he understood that he might get arrested by sticking around. And that was kind of his point, to show Canadians, people standing up for this. And hopefully, he was hoping maybe some of the cops would, drop their gear and do the right thing. We've seen that happen in other countries where the police officers in their riot gear drop their gear and do the right thing. Were you along that mindset too, or did you think this is going to get rough? So when you decided to, like, first you're going to tell me the story of where you found that spot to sit down at or kneel down at. But before you got there, did you think they were going to rough you up, or did you think maybe if I show some love and patience, they may smarten up? What was your mindset at that time?
I had been hearing reports from the previous day. So I was arrested the day after Chris. Okay. And so I was hearing reports all day that they weren't actually charging anyone, that they were roughing them up, taking them out of town. So when the announcements were going off that you'll be charged and arrested and you need to move, I knew that their threats were empty and that we weren't doing anything wrong. And I wasn't going to back down from that. At the same time, I had no intention of being arrested that day. I didn't really know what my plan was. Okay. So it did happen somewhat organically. At a certain point, it just happened naturally, I'll say. And
now, you didn't think you'd be arrested because you didn't think you were doing anything wrong. So you thought that they're not going to arrest you because you're not doing anything wrong?
Well, I thought that they would arrest us, but they wouldn't charge us with anything because they couldn't. They couldn't justify any of the arrests. So I was willing to.
So you thought they would detain you and lock you and move you. You knew that because of reports from the day before. They're just moving people out of town and dropping them off.
Yeah.
So you thought that would be the worst case scenario?
Yes.
Okay. So that seems to be like a calculated risk. It doesn't seem to be a big deal. If all is going to happen is you're going to move around and drop you off. Yeah. Is that what ended up happening? So
and I was, go ahead with your question.
No, sorry. I was going to say, so as you told me before, I think it was a Canada Day special when we first met you. It was kind of interesting how you found yourself right where you were. There was something about a piece of paper. If you want to kind of recall that.
Of course. Yeah. So they had, at that point, they had taken all of Wellington. So they took down the stage area, and then they moved us all down one of the side streets. So I believe people were either on O'Connor, like myself, or Bank, or Metcalf at that point, possibly some other streets as well, but those were the main ones. And it was quite disheartening. I remember when they took down the stage, and I remember just seeing them rip down the Canadian flag, and I took a step back and I just sat there and had a little talk with myself. And by the time they pushed us back to O'Connor, they took some time to regroup on those side streets. And up until that point, there were not that many people that were finding their way into Ottawa to be there with us. And then once we were on those side streets, I looked back and I just saw like hundreds of people streaming their way up the street to join us. And it was like a scene out of Braveheart, The
cavalry's here. They're here.
They're here.
Just missing the horses. That's all you're missing.
Yeah. And I just knew everyone here was such good people. And I've always stood up to bullies. I'm not a violent or aggressive person, but I will get in the way of a bully. And I think that's kind of my inner bull came out, and I saw, something just kind of came over me, and I knew what I had to do. And I looked over, and somebody had a whole pile of the Bill of Rights in like nice big copies of it. So I took a whole bunch of them and I put them along the line. And we're right in front of Parliament. Parliament's right in front of us. And Parliament building is right on the Bill of Rights, you know? So I put it on.
It's right there.
Yeah, I put it on the line, and I told the officers individually that that they may be able to justify clearing the streets because they really wanted the trucks to move. And even that, I don't think is justifiable, obviously. But to turn on just the people at this point, they would be trampling our Bill of Rights with their boots, literally and figuratively.
Right.
And I was not going to move past this point. And I knelt down and I prayed. And a man from the Middle Eastern culture, I'm not well versed in that, but God love him. He laid down his prayer mat and he went and he started praying. And somebody passed up a Bible and they put it on the line. And then they switched the police. So the blue coat police were originally in the front. And then they switched them with the riot police.
Right.
Move on the people. You know, so they put the really violent guys against the people. And so that was interesting. And I think I got up and I said the same thing to them. I don't know if they understood me, but I was really clear with the guy in front of me. I'm not moving. And there was a bunch of people in the crowd who also felt like that was the line for them. And they had been willing to do that further up the line. And when they saw me go down, they were like, okay, we're going to do this together. And they knelt down beside me. And when they moved forward, we just didn't move. We stayed right there. And kind of like Chris said, to show the Canadian people what they'll do, you know?
Yep.
And sure enough, the second we got behind that first row, they just, I don't know exactly what happened with Jeremy Glass from Shelburne. It took me months to figure out who was actually with me on that line. But he's started rallies in Shelburne and Ontario, and they've been quite successful. Anyway, but they threw me to the ground. My hands were in front of me, and one of them took their knee and just jumped on my back with it. And
yeah, that was not necessary.
Then there was several of them on top. And I couldn't move my arms, but they kept saying, put your hands behind your back. And I couldn't because of the weight of my body and their body. And eventually I looked up to try and communicate to them, like, I'll gladly move my hands. Like, if you could just ease up a bit. And they had a gun right at my head. So afterwards, even though I knew what I was doing and I was okay with what I was doing and I was willing to do that, I had some PTSD after that because the pain, I associated the pain with the image, and it took a few days for that to actually kick in. And all of a sudden it was like constant flashbacks to that. But I'll go back to that moment. And so they picked me up off the ground and they handed me to the police officer from Ottawa. And he's like, he just looked at me and I looked back at the scene. And the Bill of Rights they were all swirling up in a wind tunnel with the snow like this behind the riot police moving forward. And he dropped a tear and he said, I want you guys to know you won this today. You proved you were peaceful and the truth will come out one day. And then he processed me and drove me out of town like a raccoon and dropped me off in the snowbank with a few others. But, you know, right away, they were dropping us at a tow yard where they were taking the trucks, and there was a trucker there with one of the men from the biker church, and they drove us back to that church. And I walked into this warm building with a huge mosaic of Jesus right in front of us, and warm food and cots and good people, and I just knew we did the right thing. We did the right thing. And it was like a high in a way. You know, we kind of went through a portal that day of fear. It's like, well, we're not going to be afraid of this. And I've read a lot of old Christian books like John Bunyan's Pilgrim Progress. Sorry, am I saying that right? I always mess that up. I think it's John Bunyan. is it
Okay.
Paul or John? Anyway,
I'm
but
sorry.
he talks about paper dragons, right? So when we're afraid of something, and that's what they looked like. To me, they just looked like green paper dragons that actually had no authority. And if we go through it, we'll break the illusion of their authority. And hopefully that's what we're doing and what we'll do. And it kind of is proven, the fact that there was no charges. There was, we will be proved right in the end. And already we are. So
yeah, we're on that stage now. I think we're on that stage that the officer was mentioning as his tear came down before he drove you out of town. We're at that stage now. So thank you for creating Maggie's line. So you created a Maggie's line, and then people joined you on that one. And I just wanted to let everybody know, you mentioned the Bikers Church. So Pastor Rob and Melissa McKee will be on tomorrow. I'll be interviewing them tomorrow from the Bikers Church. So if you want to tune into that one, you might see them again, or at least some of the people that you met at that tow yard. It's a great group of people. So we'll be seeing them tomorrow. A special Saturday one, because that's when they're available. So we'll be having them on tomorrow. So Chris, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it to you, and I'm sorry, buddy, but I'm going to bring up your POEC testimony, because I think you captured quite a bit of it right there. And then what we'll do is we'll go into the rest of your story after we watch that video, if you don't mind.
That's good.
Okay. Now, this one still bothers me, so I can imagine you, Chris, so sorry.
So I just want to ask some questions about your background really quickly. So Mr. Deering, I understand that you're a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yes, sir.
And you served a tour of duty in Afghanistan.
Yes, sir.
And I understand that you were wounded on that tour.
It was.
Can you briefly tell the commissioner about that event?
Sure. I joined the military quickly in 2007, finished my training very quick. I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2008. So in less than approximately 2 years, I was in Afghanistan. 4 months into my tour, my vehicle was hit by a IED, which struck my vehicle. Sorry, it blew my vehicle about 100 feet in the air, killing 3 occupants immediately and leaving me seriously wounded. I asked the policeman who was on both sides of me, I said, do you mind, you know my conditions, is it okay if I sit or kneel because I'm in chronic pain? It was obvious, my face was flushed, and I cried multiple times, and I don't cry ever. It was the worst pain I had felt since I'd been blown up. The fact that I couldn't sit or stand was to me cruel and unusual punishment. We would go 15, 20 minutes without even moving. I also asked if I could have my medication, in which I had my prescription and my medication on my person, so that if I needed it, I could ask. I asked, and I was denied my medication to comfort my duress. If I could, I'd like to speak directly to you, sir. I think I'd like to ask you, and as a veteran, I'm asking you that if this never happens again, you have the power of a whole country behind your opinion. Please use it to protect the Canadian people from this kind of misbehavior from this government towards its people ever again. Please. Thank you.
Chris, thank you for saying all that. I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that for us. This is what everybody was thinking and feeling, and you represented us very well right there, Chris. Can you kind of take me back to that moment when you were talking to Rollo, and you were looking right at him? What was his expression? What was he doing at that time?
Initially, I thought he was his look seemed as though he was really taking what I was saying in, and I thought he'd be impartial. Obviously, I don't think he cared one bit. I mean, he listened, he probably understood, but I don't think he gave one shit, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we saw that in his report, didn't we?
Yeah.
So in the end, he gave you a face to look at, but I don't know if he was connecting with you on that at all.
I will say he was the only one person to thank me for my service. That was it.
He did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, we do love you for that, for sure. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the day that this was happening. You had 2 officers on either side. You wanted some relief. You couldn't get it. So did they pick you up and put you into a vehicle and take you away like they did with Maggie and drop you off?
Well, do you mind if I go back to the beginning just to kind of recap?
Please go. Please go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was around. So like I said, I came up the 17th that night. I met some people. The following day, I slept in my car that night. I wanted to get the full experience, so I slept in the snow in my backseat of my car. I woke up around 5-6 o'clock. Kind of started moving. I went down to the war memorial around, I'd say 8 or 8:30. Grabbed a coffee, started chatting, and then we saw the police mobilizing. I think it was later on, and so 12:20, there was a handful of veterans around the memorial, and we said, well, it's time to go. The police were mobilizing, so we all went. So we lined up probably about 12:25, 12:30, which we had a face-to-face probably about 20 or so minutes before they even started advancing. We had time to converse. So like I said, I had time to talk with 4 or 5 or 6 police officers, had a 5-minute chat with each one of them. But like Maggie said, as soon as you chat with one of them, they'd kind of move around. So they don't want to get too personal, right? And then they switch in other people. So, and like the last person that I spoke to, my luck, the guy happens to be like 6'5" or 6'4", whatever he was, 230 pounds. And I told him too. I showed him the photo of my crater. I said, listen, if you do arrest me, just don't hurt my back. The guy kneed me right in my side twice. The guy's 240 pounds ish. Pretty hard blow. So I took 2 knees to the side. The second one pretty much turtled me. I knew I couldn't take a third one because it could have broken something or really damaged me. So I turtled up. As I was laying down, they punched me, let's say 4 or 5 times in my head. I got a little bit of damage in my head. They hit. Anyways, they're police. They can't hit. So that was that. They had pushed my head in the snow for about 1.5 minutes while they zip tied my hands. So I was laying down, probably face down for about 2 minutes. They finally brought me up to a standing position. I needed help because I couldn't get up, so I had 1 officer on each side. They then walked me down to the processing line, which was probably about 40 meters away or so, and it's all full snow and it's hard to walk. So again, they're lifting me down there pretty much. We're walking down. And like I said earlier, the processing line, it took 2 hours from the end to the start, or the start to the end, however you want to look at it. So for 2 hours in minus 20-degree weather, I was zip tied, standing up. They wouldn't allow me to sit. They wouldn't allow me to kneel. There was no reason behind it. There must have been 4,000 cops there. What am I going to do? Run away?
Right.
So they denied me that. Again, I asked for my medication. I wanted them to deny me it because it's just another nail in the coffin. I didn't care. I can take some pain, and that's why I was there as well, because civilians shouldn't have to be beaten. It's people like I don't mind. It's all right. I can deal with it. Civilians shouldn't be beaten, and the abuse that day was absolutely disgusting. If I had done that on my tour to Afghanistan, I would have been flown back home, court-martialed, and given a 5F release. Anyways, I digress. So I was there. They was the processing line. It took 2 hours. Every 15, 20 minutes, we'd slowly move a little bit. And I had mentioned in the video too, like, I never cry ever. I think I cried twice in the line because my face was all flush. I was like in agony. And for anyone that knows, anyone who has chronic pain, the worst thing about being in chronic pain is not being able to move around. If you're stuck in one position, your chronic pain gets worse when you can't move around. And that was the worst 2 hours of pain I've had since I've been literally blown up. We finally get to the end of the line. They take my information. They take my little photo and the little whiteboard, and then they put me in the back of the squad car. The guy, there's 2 police officers in the front of the car, and I'm in the back. When they put me, actually, sorry, I gotta go back just 1 second.
Sure. Yeah.
When I was in the line, I had my medals on my jacket. I had 3 medals. I had my campaign star, my sacrifice medal, and my Queen Jubilee medal. And during the shoving, one of my clasps came off, so it was only hanging on by 1 pin. So to save it, I put my medals in my pocket, but I ended up losing my Queen Jubilee. The police knocked it off, so I'm still missing a Queen Jubilee medal. All right, so fast forward again. So I'm in the processing line.
In the car. You're in the car.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in the car. And they're reading me my rights and what I'm being charged with. And again, like Maggie said, like it's empty, it's ridiculous. Like they can say they want to charge me with whatever, it's garbage. So for me, it was public mischief and I forgot the other one.
Resistance or anything?
No, they want to put assault on mine, but I'm like, guys, like that's ridiculous. Go for it. I don't care. But no, there was two. I forget the other one. But anyways, they chatted with that for about 5 minutes. And leading up to that, when they put me in the squad car, I had the zip ties on my wrists, and my wrists were behind my back. Now, the way the zip ties were pulling out, they were coming out from my back, so I couldn't physically sit down. Again, I had injuries, right? So I couldn't physically sit down in the seat. I was lying on my side, and I also have hearing loss. So the policeman, he's talking to me, and they get that glass right, and I'd say, "Excuse me, sir, I can't hear you." And I asked him 3 times, and every time he get angry, thinking I was like messing with him. Like, right. Sir, I have hearing loss. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And he get frustrated and whatever. But after 10 minutes, the senior officer, he went for a few minutes, and he came back and he said, "Well, today's your lucky day." So is that so? He said, "Yeah, you're not being charged with anything." I said, "Well, that's great." I said, "Can I know what changed?" He said, "No, you don't need to know that." I said, "Okay." So at that point, in my understanding, I'm free to go.
Mm-hmm.
No. So as soon as they finished that, they're like, "Okay, you can get out of the car. Now you're going to go into this paddy wagon." Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why am I going to a paddy wagon? I'm free to go. But like, again, Maggie said, they want to waste your time. They want to truck you out in the city so they can use your time up. So I sat in the paddy wagon for 45 minutes. And for anyone who has never been in a paddy wagon, when it's cold outside and they're stationary, there's no heat. So, and right. in the middle is all metal. It's all steel, whatever. It's freezing. And when you walk in, there's only one portion that you can really stand up tall. The other spots is pretty much like a bench you're going to sit down, right? So for me, after the 2 hours of the paddy wagon being filled up, I had chronic pain and I had to stand up. So I had a little spot that was probably like, I don't know, a really tiny spot that I had to stand. I had to ask the other 4 people. I said, "Do you mind if I go stand in that little hole so I can stretch my back?" It was brutal. So eventually, after a couple hours, they drove us around and they dumped us off at this, what was it? Sorry, hang on. It was a public works building, like 20 minutes outside of the city. And they opened the cabinets up. They got us out. They gave us our personal items back. They gave us no paperwork. There was 2 policemen that came out. One was the more scary guy. He came out. He said, "Hey, don't you fucking come back to Ottawa, or we're going to charge you."
Mm-hmm.
And then he went back to his vehicle. And the other officer came out. And he's like, "Oh, you guys are great, man. I watch Jordan Peterson, and he sympathized with us." I'm like, "Well, what are you doing then?"
Yeah.
So that was that. Then they ditched us there. That was around, I think, 6 or so in the evening, 5:58. And then I called again. That guy, I met Chris Ivey. I met him for 5 seconds. I called him up. He dropped everything. He drove 40 minutes to get us. He drove me and a few friends to get us home. And I stayed there that night. And yeah, it was an experience. I didn't. What's that?
So you left. You didn't go back. So after you were dropped off in front of the public works building, you called your friend, and that was it.
Yeah, and I was debating going back the next day, but as Maggie will probably tell you, there was a lot of unknowns. I mean, there was empty promises, and I didn't care about getting arrested. But the second day was way more violent, and I thought, like, what happened to me was nothing. Getting kicked and punched, whatever. It's not that bad. But being hit with batons, pepper spray, trampled with horses. I had a friend who was hit with the muzzle of a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Is that the video that we saw where they were doing that? They're hitting him on the ground with the muzzle?
Yeah, and I asked him how it was. He said, "Oh, it wasn't that bad." But that's all the people who were there. It was the same kind of sentiment, right? We're all like, it's all for the greater good,
Well, you're also under adrenaline and other passionate things, so you wouldn't have felt all the pain that was really there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're back to your friend's place. You've walked away. You're not coming back the next day. I think that's the day that Maggie is there, so she's the day after you.
Yeah.
So now what we have is, I'm going to go back to Maggie. So Maggie, now what we have is basically you're both on the same day now. So the day that you get arrested, well, not even arrested, just detained and carted away, you meet up with the biker church people. And then from that point, what happens? Do you go back, or do you go to another place, or do you go home? I think you're muted. 1 second. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'll go back to the paddy wagon experience as well.
Okay.
And that was interesting. I've never been in a paddy wagon before. I've never been arrested before. And our paddy wagon was a little bit different than Chris's by the sounds of it. There was,
Okay.
We were all in our own little individual cells, so we couldn't see each other. And it did seem like it was going to go on and on forever when we were being driven out. And I just had to think to myself, okay, Maggie, just assume that you're going to be in this for the next 24 hours.
Okay. You're preparing yourself mentally.
Yeah, prepared myself mentally. And so I did that probably within, because they were driving rough too. So we were being bounced around, and it just felt like they were driving, you know, not considering the fact that people were in the back and cold.
Oh, they were considering. They were shaking you up.
And so I just did that. And when we finally did stop, we stopped and all of us started singing "Oh Canada" in the back. So
that's great.
Yeah. So we're all sitting there, and then when we got out, they gave us our bags and everything, and they didn't break our spirits, you know, at all. And so that was really beautiful. And I went to the biker church, and I had a hotel in the red zone, and I told the police that. I said, I can't not go back to the red zone. This is where my hotel is. And he said, oh, don't worry. He's like, just don't go back to the front line.
Right.
So I got back. I ran myself a hot bath, geared back up, and went down. And I joined where the bubble bus was parked on Metcalf. Okay. And there was still a friend, some of the people I met there, they had a whole truck set up with speakers on it and a DJ, and they were still dancing and celebrating and gathering. And so they were still there. And then I saw the front line slowly moving and encroaching on them. And I backed away and just sat. It was like watching the fun police. Okay. Is what it was. It was like these.
They're coming to end the parade.
You know, they're coming, and they just crawled up on this truck and they tore its speakers and like just tore everything down. And so I walked back to my hotel, and again there was a couple happy people with their little speakers walking through the street, you know, with their little group, and the police were, you know, trying to move in on these happy people doing nothing but walking in the streets of Ottawa with their music. And I honestly think that it's really important that we keep our spirits high and that we stay in that loving energy, and we keep gathering and coming together, because that seems to be what they really don't want us to do. So it must be powerful, and I know it's powerful. So I stayed that night. I did a live in the morning. I shared my experience, and then I left and I went to Arnprior the next day, and we regrouped there. Yeah, we regrouped there, and everyone sat around the fire. We all shared our story. It was beautiful. It was like a sharing circle and such a bonding experience. Yeah.
Do you still know some of those people, and do you remember anybody from the paddy wagon? Did you catch any names? Did you guys exchange any names?
Yeah, I was with Dave from the Shed. Was there?
Oh, cool.
So I have a picture of me and him in the truck that drove us to the biker church, of us and our bags, you know, our bags with the city of Ottawa on them, our arrest bags.
That's cool.
And who else?
Our arrest bags. This is like the Oscars. Everybody got a bag to take home.
I still have that bag. I'll have that.
Cool.
Bag. So
we might find that in a museum one day or something. But
that's the thing. If we were actually occupying Ottawa, we would have taken our stuff. You know, if we were really, you know, organized, we would have taken all of our memorabilia, because it would have been priceless.
That's what terrorists do. That's what terrorists do, right? They take all their stuff and personal items and keep it with them, and they pray for people, and they take pictures with other people. That's what terrorists do.
But instead, we showed what the government of Canada would do instead. you know, so it was
Right.
more important to show the people in the world what they would do to people like us.
Right. And with your agenda 2021 and 2030 stuff, you understand that that was all division. They were trying to divide. And this is why you push hard on unity, because anything that they want to do, you want to do the opposite of that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now that you've got back to Armprior, I always get that wrong. There's an airport there, and I flew there all the time, and I can't say the name of it. Armprior.
Yes.
There we go.
That's how I call it. Armprior. That's how I pronounced it. I could be wrong.
Yeah. No worries. It works for us today. Did you get sustain any injuries? Did you get any bruising? Did you get any actual injuries?
Yeah, my back was really messed up for about a year. I think it was about March that my shoulder stopped being in constant pain and lack of mobility. I can move it now quite a bit. Like I said, the PTSD was there. There was still the adrenaline, as you mentioned. So it really didn't hit me until I got home.
Right. Wears off and get to the tub.
Yeah. And at that point, yeah, the PTSD kicked in, and
that's when the pain started relating to the memory of the gun, and that's when that started to kick off for you.
Yeah, and I had a hard time sleeping. I started drinking neocitrin. So for 12 years prior to this, I didn't drink any alcohol. I didn't smoke any cigarettes. I was clean from anything. And then I started drinking neocitrin just to put myself to bed, and just had a hard time dealing with, like, my window of tolerance to stress shrunk to 0.
Oh, sorry.
So
I understand.
Everything I was already dealing with in my life, I couldn't deal with anymore, and that's why I left in 1 year ago today.
Oh, wow. So we have a bit of an anniversary today.
Yeah, but it was all, in a way, a good thing, because sometimes people aren't meant to be in situations so long that they're putting up and tolerating with a large degree of stress and stuff like that. So I look at it as you know, I have to see the lesson in it and look at it as a good thing. And I don't have those flashbacks anymore. I've really made an effort to heal as quickly as I can, because we still have a lot of work to do in the country, and we need as many people in their right mind and healed as we can get to. So it's important.
Absolutely. And some would say we have, oh, sorry.
But in Armprior was a beautiful experience. I got to see an entire village set up in less than a day. And it goes to show what Canadians can do when we work together and we pool our resources together. Because I truly think we could fix this country if we turn our attention away from expecting the government to do it, to picking up the ball and starting to fix our communities on our own, and just step up as leaders across the country and not wait to get elected to do that. You know, we can fix the country by working together. So
absolutely. And I think conversations are a big part of that. It's kind of why I'm doing this. You may not know, but I'm running for office. So between now and 2025, my goal is to be an MP. This is my way of reaching people and to teach myself how to be an MP by talking to a whole bunch of people and learning a bunch of things. So this is my path forward. So I do appreciate you sharing all your stories, because to be a good MP, to be able to represent people, to have your constituents in your mind, you need to be able to talk to all types of people with stories and communicate with them. So this is my mission that I'm on, is to actually win as an independent candidate, go in there without party politics, and do exactly some of this. So I may be just one seat, but I'm going to be a very loud one, and they're definitely going to hear from me if I can get in there. So I understand completely what you're talking about. You guys were pounding on the front door kind of, but I'm going to go in the back door with a key because I'll get elected that way. So that's my plan there, Maggie. So I want to do exactly what you're just talking about. Yeah. So, yay, I'm going to try that. No, Chris, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to actually talk a bit about your injuries that you sustained in that. And Maggie talked to us how it took about a year. Like, first, initially, she wasn't feeling the pain. After she got home, the adrenaline wears off. Things start to sink in. She starts to get more pain. She starts to get some PTSD. And it took a while for her to work through that. Can you take us through your injuries that you sustained that day and what it meant to you immediately after?
Sure. So I would agree with Maggie. Probably the first 4 or 5 days afterwards, the pain was pretty minimal because the adrenaline was just the good feeling around. It was just, we felt great. So I didn't really feel
You're on a natural high.
Yeah. So I didn't feel it until I got home, probably 5 or 6 days. I would say my pain was around 70 or 80 days. It was mostly back. And when I say so 40 or 50 or 60 days, like my pain scale is 0 to 10, and I would say it was about a 9 or 10 for the period of those few months. Now that being said, I've had lots of practice with chronic pain. So I spent I was 20 when I got blown up, 34 now. So I spent 14 years with chronic pain. The first thing about Pain Club is you don't talk about pain. You don't talk about pain. You don't manifest pain. So, yeah, I was probably in pain for a couple of months, maybe 90 days the max. It was a job to do for me, and I can't. And if again, I'll gladly go again.
So, how did you manage the pain? Was it through drugs, rehabilitation, just gritting it through?
So I do smoke cannabis to relieve some pain. I try to do it only in the evenings because I find it affects my cognitive and other abilities. So I try to smoke in the evenings. In the daytime, I've been doing a lot of breathing exercises. I'm trying to stay consistent with the Wim Hof method. Cold showers or a cold plunge takes away your inflammation. Feels great. But my main methodology is don't talk about pain. Don't think about pain. Don't even address it. I mean, I got blown up. I could easily be sitting here at home thinking, woe is me, drinking myself, and taking pills, but why? What will that do? So no, just a clean, healthy living, eat well, try to get outside, get your vitamin D, spend your time with your wife and kids or your family. And just, for me, I try to reflect like every day. Like, so I do see I should have been killed. Right. So every day I try to just zone out and say, you know what, like, I'm just lucky to be here. So sometimes when I'm upset or frustrated or I'm in pain, I go, you know what, I could easily be dead. So it's just all good.
Right. Yeah. And you do know some of your brothers are gone. And after some of your brothers are gone, I've spoken to several vets, and this is a lifelong thing for you. So thank you very much for keeping your perspective on that.
Thanks. I would say too, I do believe that the guys are with me all the time. So it kind of makes me 4 times as strong. So yeah.
Yes, I hear that, brother, for sure. So today you're much better. So you got over that little hump, and you're dealing with your other stuff normally. Now, did you get any PTSD out of this or anything else triggered around that?
I mean, yes and no. It really impacted my belief system with the police and the government, and just.
So it's more your faith in the system.
I'm very conflicted because, like, I know I went with a purpose, and I know I went knowing what was going to happen. It was a very good probability what was going to happen happened, and I'm still very grateful that I was able to do that for Canadians, and I wouldn't change a thing. And I forgot where I'm at right now.
Right, but you wanted to be wrong about that. You knew what was going to happen, but you wanted to be wrong in your heart of hearts. You were hoping the government wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So your heart was broken by knowing what was coming and then having it confirmed.
Yes. Now, the byproduct of that. Now, so I went in knowing or having a good idea of what was going to happen. The byproduct of that was that I knew we have to have some accountability, right? So mine was more the patience game. I don't mind that. So we filed a lawsuit. Against Justin Trudeau, the Ottawa Police Services Board, Peter Chief Slowly, and Steve Bell. I'm patient. I'll take 5-10 years. I don't care. This is the long game for me, and it's about getting accountability. And I'll say too, whatever funds we end up making from that lawsuit, they're going to go back to the people in a different multitude of ways.
Well, do understand that the people would expect you to make sure you're taken care of first, and then everything left over is for sure, because you not continuing with a comfortable life after what you went through is not going to help Canada. Making sure that you're taken care of and then helping Canada is a good way to go about it, my brother. We need to make sure that you have ways to deal with the rest of your journey and stay as comfortable as possible. So thank you for doing that work. And I'm sure anybody else listening, I know some of your friends are listening. We got Alex Cabana listening. And we have him on Monday, by the way. So if you want to see his interview, you'll see that on Monday.
Yeah.
You know, people like him and people like you, we always have to stand behind all the way through the end here. So I appreciate that. And if something happens and we put together something for you, like we go with you to the December 13th and we go enjoy that memorial with you or something else, accept it. People want to help you. Okay.
Appreciate that.
No, thank you, brother. All right, Maggie. So now you're past the tough part of your country, you know, coming down on you like this, and then you get a call or an email or some sort of message that you're expected or you're wanted at the POEC. So yesterday we spoke to Bridget Belton about that. She had to be subpoenaed and she had to lawyer up or paralegal up. What about you? Did you get an invite? Were you subpoenaed? Did you reach out? How did you get involved with the POEC?
So that summer, like I said, I didn't attend too many events, but I spoke to a lot of people, not a lot of people, my support network in general. One of my friends in town here was a good support person for me that summer. And I shared my story with many people, I guess, many people, even though I didn't attend that many events. And people were inspired by it. And I guess the story made the way around, and they asked, I got a call saying, we hear you have a story to say, to tell. And they asked if I would give a statement, and I did. And I got a call back within a week asking if I would go, and I had a week to prepare. So it was kind of hard because I hadn't gone through any of the video. I had blocked it out of my mind. I had moved on with my life as best I could. And so that week I had to peel through video, and it was hard.
Yes.
Hard to watch. And, but going back to Ottawa and being able to share my story in such a public way, even though I feel it didn't really come out and come through during the testimony as much as I would have liked it to, that healed me. And especially, so afterward, I felt like a different person when I went and I shared, and then I walked the streets of Ottawa afterwards. Going back the day before I testified, I walked the streets of Ottawa and I just wept. I cried. I remembered everything. And then I spoke at the inquiry, and then I left the building and I walked down the streets again. And it was very healing to be able to share the story. So I highly recommend people who were there to go and have that experience if they can, and even walk the streets, cry, and sit in a circle at the Parliament ground with the Welling Street regulars, whoever is there, and share your story. And, you know, that's how we can heal from that, because there is a lot of buildup there. So that's how I ended up there. A friend must have been in contact with the Justice Center and asked them to get in contact with me. So
it was the Justice Center who invited you?
Yes, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't the POC itself, so it wasn't the council there. Because you weren't on the original list. Neither one of you were on the original list. And then also one day you popped up on the list and be like, oh, wow, look at that. So you were kind of like a last minute addition from the Justice Center?
Yes. And they tried hard not to let us on. If you remember, they spent about half an hour
objecting to
us speaking. And, you know, 2 out of millions of people who attended having an opportunity to share. their experience of that Emergency Act isn't too much to ask. So,
no, to remind everybody, it was Government of Canada that objected to it.
Yes, and the police service, I think there was quite a few objections to it.
Basically, the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that other side, all of them objected to it. And then on your side, I believe Brendan even argued for you. So
Yes.
the convoy lawyer, I think Rob Kitchen, I can't remember his name. Rob did some argument for you. I love that guy, by the way. He did some great arguing. And I can't believe I don't have his name. I have his autograph somewhere. I should put it up in my set. Some good people there. Did they reach out to you and interview at all, the Justice Center? Did they kind of have a pre-interview with you?
Yeah, it was over the phone, and we did an interview, and then we did the statement afterwards. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's pretty normal. Did anybody else reach out to you? Did the counsel for the POEC reach out to you as well?
No, the night before, we sat down with the council and went over a few things, but that was it.
Okay. Sometimes they'll interview you because they want to be ready as well, but I guess they were just waiting for your testimony. And then, Chris, same question. So how did you get involved? Was it the same people? The Justice Center reached out to you? Or how did you get involved in the POEC?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember back if I was invited or if I asked. I really 100% forget. I'm pretty sure I was invited again from Epitipiak with the Justice Center as well. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so there was no subpoena. No, you're good. So there was no subpoena. You went there willingly. They invited you.
Yeah. I wanted to be on there. I wanted to get some stuff on record. I didn't really feel like I achieved what I wanted to achieve. Like I had all the emotions for the last, 3 years, and when you get in the stand, it's totally different. And but I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah. Now, what we heard just from Maggie is the day before she walked the street, a lot of emotions are coming back. She just spent a week remembering it all and seeing video, so now it's all fresh again. But then she did her testimony, and then she felt therapeutic. There was a release after.
Sorry, you're cutting out.
Apologies. So Maggie was mentioning how she. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Chris?
Yep, I'm good now.
Okay, I'll put myself here, so maybe it'll help. So Maggie mentioned that before the testimony, she was absorbing all that information for the week. It was all coming back. It was all fresh again. She walked the streets. It was emotional for her. She reconnected to those feelings. She then gave her testimony, and it was like a therapy. It was therapeutic for her. It was a release. And the next, when she walked out, it was a very different. The air smelled good. You can hear the birds again. For you, did you have a similar experience when you were done your testimony? Did you feel like that was a bit of a release for you?
Yes and no. I was just happy to get it done. I don't really like putting myself in forums like that. I'd rather just be in the shadows, and I'd rather just take the beating, to be honest. Okay. I don't want to be in the forefront, to be honest. I'd just rather get the dirty work done. But no, I was happy I did it. Again, I wasn't really pleased with my outcome, but after I did rewatch it, and it wasn't terrible. And with someone with a brain injury, it was all right.
I think you're being critical. So I thought your testimony was perfect, both of you. I didn't think there was anything that could be added. But now's a good chance to add anything that you would want to have said then, and maybe want to tie up some loose ends or dot some I's, cross some T's. Well,
again, it was the last 3 years of the whole pandemic. I had all these built up frustrations and emotions, right? Like we all did. And then once the convoy started, a lot of that stuff just left. So I didn't have those emotions when I was on the stand. And even now, I mean, it's been so long, we've dealt with so much crap, and now it's just time to get over the next hedge.
I like that attitude a lot. So you went in there, you did your job, kind of like a soldier. You went and faced it, you dealt with it, you did it your best you could. And was there some good relief for you after? Like there was some relief that it was done, at least?
Finished for sure. I mean, I can't stand being in those situations, but I want to get on the next step, which was accountability.
We're still waiting on that step, aren't we? Right.
we should have something this summer.
You think so? You think we'll have some good accountability this summer?
No, well, not accountability, but we'll have a first step. So, I mean, my accountability probably be 5-10 years. I don't know, but I'm patient, and I'll take as long as I need to.
Yeah, we may need another government in there and some people that want to push for accountability. Right now, there's nobody in there that does that. So what do you mean? Like, you think something's going to happen this summer, or is this related to your claim, or
Well,
what do you
yes,
think? What do you think?
we filed just after, pretty sure just after Christmas in January. So my paralegal that I'm using right now, Matthew C. Olson, guy's amazing. He was a veteran in his past life. He's a pastor, and this guy, man, is like he's for the people. He's not his typical lawyer. Um, he's doing things for Canada, and it's just great. He's a good
That's
person,
amazing.
and we're going after accountability. I mean, and money as well, but the money is not. I don't care about money. We're going to use it in good ways, but they seem to love money, so we'll have to take some of that from you.
Sure. So do you have a hearing or something coming up this summer? Like, what is there a date coming up that you're looking forward to?
Well, I meant to follow up with my legal counsel before the interview. So after
Sure.
after that, I'll follow up with you and I'll let you
Okay,
know
no
what's
problem.
going on. Yeah,
Yeah, keep us posted because we can stay on top of that and let people know,
for
you know,
sure.
you had a hearing here, it's moving forward, or whatever's going on. That'd be cool. Now, you mentioned you have a paralegal. So what court are you going through? Are you going through small claims court? Like, what court are you going through?
So there's a couple of different, and this is where I like to have him with me too. Like the
Okay.
legal stuff kind of gets jumbled in my head. So I know there's a few different methods he's doing. I think he started with the OPIRD claim, but
Okay.
there's different things he
Administrative.
can do, and I don't really know, and I trust him to kind of get the job done. So
Well, just to give you a heads up, this little piece of paper here is an Ontario paralegal degree. So I have that, actually know what they can and can't do. So you're probably going through some administrative law where you're filing with administrative boards and you're going to have some hearings. Are you doing anything on civil? Like, are you actually suing in another court, or are you going through the administrative process first?
it's a good question. I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
yeah. Well, if it's a paralegal, you're likely going through administrative and maybe small claims court,
Okay.
because he can't go any higher than that. But he can certainly get yourself ready for higher than that. So it sounds like he may have a path that he's taking you on, which
Yeah.
is a
Well,
good plan.
and if possible too, I'm sure he might want to jump on one of these podcasts as well. So if I could tee that up to have both of us on, it would be better.
Yeah, sure. So next time you want to come back for an update on how your claim's going, we'll have you and him back, and we'll do exactly that. We'll have an update.
Great.
So you tell me when you're ready for that, and we'll make that work.
Done.
Okay, cool. So we lost Maggie for a second, but I don't know if she can hear us. There she is. Wow, I said the magic word, and just like a bomb in front of her place, she's right there. So Maggie, same story. Are you doing anything on the legal front? Are you filing any claims? Are you holding anybody accountable? Or are you putting this behind you and moving forward?
Yeah, I hadn't considered it, but the option came before me, and I'm going with the same lawyer that Chris is going with, and just letting him take care of it. So
excellent. So tell that person you got another paralegal that would be willing to put in some time just to dot some I's and help with the bills. So we can do some pro bono there.
Thank you.
Because I'd be very interested in how this is going to advance, because lots of people like you and Chris may follow in your footsteps if there's a path forward for some accountability. So that's exciting. So keep us up to date. So maybe we'll have you and the lawyer and paralegal and Chris all together as a big update on how that's going. That'll be kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now let's... Well, we want to get you the attention that you need. We want the public support behind it. And you never know who comes out and says, hey, I saw that episode and I want to help. Or, hey, look, I actually have some video you don't know about. You know, stuff like that. You never know who comes out of the woodwork. All right. So let's put the legal stuff aside now, and let's put the pain aside, and let's go looking into what are you guys doing going forward. So now both of you have a bit of a transition in your chapters, and you're preparing your new life. What is your goal in, let's say, 5 years? Where do you want to see Canada, and where do you want to see you?
Oh, that's a big question.
You got plenty of time.
So even before the convoy, I was always looking for solutions for the country and what I could do to help, what my role was. And the more I looked, the more I found that what needed to be done was being done. But there was a lot that needed to be done. And I basically laid out in a big brainstorm what we needed to do as a country. And now what I found is we have all the pieces of the puzzle, and we just need to put them together. And so since I did even before I did the speech to my town council about the UN, I created a newsletter where I was laying out kind of a blueprint of the actions that we needed to take on a local level across the country that would create the grassroots movement that we need to see in order to change the country for the better. So if we want to get people elected, we need to do the groundwork. If we want the legal system to bring us justice, we need to expose the flaws in the legal system and relearn how to work with the laws of this country. And I think the greatest power that we have is connecting the people. So when Ottawa happened, it brought together people from across the country who are now connected. And that connection is going to explode into the future of our country. So my passion right now is to connect the people, connect the organizations, and connect the network. And so I created a newsletter. I've laid out a blueprint, and my newsletter was shut down or deplatformed within a month. And now I have to go on to something a little bit different, but that's okay. It'll be more secure in the end. And I'm getting calls from organizations across the country. And I would like to see a conference of these organizations to come together and say, look, we're all on the same page. Now what is the next step? Let's work together. So, and really bring the people back, the power of the people back to the country. Like I said, in Armed Prior, seen what 50 capable, competent men could do in a day. And realizing that we, the people, have the expertise and the resources and the skills and everything we need to get our country back to the Canada that we know it can be, and the beautiful people that live here, and the freedom that we have in our heart that we've inherited from ages long past, not even before Western democracy. We all know in our heart what feels right as far as freedom. And we live in a very resource-rich country with beautiful land. There's no reason for us to have the problems that we have today. And we can fix these problems if we work together instead of expecting a government that, in my opinion, can be easily compared to a narcissist having an affair with a foreign lover. And if you're in that situation as an individual, there's steps that you can take to get out of that and get your life back. So I like to look at those steps and see, okay, what do we need to do? And the first step is create a support network. Somewhat ignore what they are doing, because they're going to keep doing things to create a reaction. And we do see a lot of psyops in place right now that are distracting us and taking our energy and making us upset. And then we're reacting. And, in a sense, you have to go no contact for a while before you can get your house back. You need to get on your own 2 feet, and then you go through the legal avenues to get your house back. So
gotcha.
That's one of the ways I'm looking at it for the country.
Do you mind if I play your video? So you have like a 4-minute TikTok. I have it queued up here.
Sure.
I can go ahead and play that. You got to give everybody an idea what you've been up to lately.
Sure.
Just let everybody know. It sounds like it's sped up, right? So it sounds like it's sped up to fit in the 4 minutes.
Yes.
You don't talk this fast, do you normally?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I sped it up. I thought it would be better for TikTok.
No, that's just to give everybody the heads up so they don't think it's their end or something like that. So it is sped up, but we got a good 4 minutes here of what you're talking about. It's actually pretty cool.
Like the majority of the population, I was raised to believe that climate change was a threat to our planet. I took ecosystem management at Sir Sanford Fleming College in Lindsay. In my spare time, I researched the science behind climate change in the hopes that one day I would work for the UN. I found in my research that the doomsday predictions were based on flawed science and stemmed from unelected international organizations. The policies that they are recommending have undermined our rights and our sovereignty. And I would like to give a background on that before I address the reports on your agenda tonight. In 1992, Canada signed on to the UN Agenda 21. A total of 178 nations agreed because this international agreement promised to bring big money for going green. Quote, once signed, Canada became a UN member state, a nation state, and was no longer a sovereign country under the rule of law and the supremacy of God. And everything I'm stating tonight, I will send you all the documentation to, and from their own words stating what I'm saying. It was then that all towns in Canada and every other country that signed on were, in a sense, abandoned and merged with others to form UN city-states, of which Peterborough is now one. By the year 2000, we saw countries now being governed by the direction of the United Nations, the G7, the G20, the Council of Foreign Relations, the World Bank, and the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
World Health Organization as well, and the International Council on Local and Environmental Issues. I believe that acronym is pronounced ICLEI, but you can, or ISIL, you can correct me which one. Instead of following parliamentary procedures for law changes, the municipal primer, which looks like this, the title of it, the title page, was sent to all our local towns in 1994 and outlined how they would restructure their governments, their municipal governments. In this primer, you will see that our public officials, our elected mayor and council, are now partnered with a private corporation called the City of Peterborough, all caps. This is a private corporation, not a public. And working alongside with that corporation's chief administrative officer, I believe a new one is now in place, Jasbir Reina, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, working alongside him to implement the global agenda instead of a local one, and committing public funds to private sustainable initiatives, development goals, and foreign investors under the guise of saving the planet. Now to look at your reports. First report, PEAC 23-010. Here is a plan. In here is a link to a plan that identifies measures required to achieve net zero by 2050. The measures in that plan include a vague reference to targeting mobility. This report would nominate one of you to sit on an upcoming advisory group hosted by an unnamed consultant. And this is set to launch this July. I assume this project consultant is connected with ICLEI. In report PEAC 23002, it states that Peterborough declared a climate emergency in 2019. I would like to know what local event triggered such a declaration and submit to the common sense of Peterborough residents that this was not caused by any local event or catastrophe and is therefore linked to the declaration therefore linked to the UN's global agenda and not the local agenda of the residents of Peterborough. This report states that the city participated in ICLEI Canada's Advancing Adaptation Project and received a grant for $15,000. Big money for going green. And I'm sure that is not the only amount of money that this council has received from ICLEI over the years. Most disturbingly, it states that the recent reductions in greenhouse gas emissions were primarily the result of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it modified our travel patterns. This is repeated again in report PEAC 23-009. When you put this together with the previous statement about targeting mobility, the question of whether the sacred mobility rights of the residents of Peterborough are at stake. And if your participation in furthering this agenda is not a violation of your oath to uphold the Constitution of Canada, along with our Bill of Rights, and if so, may this be a verbal warning, a verbal notice, that if you proceed with passing this agenda item, notices of liability will descend to those who pass it. With that, I formally ask that you state this motion to accept this report. The references, again, to everything I stated will be sent to you in email tomorrow, as I trust most of you might not be aware of these important matters. And with that, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There could be some questions. Any questions from members of the council? Thank you again very much for your presentation of important information.
Okay, so cool. First of all, congratulations. Are you planning to run for any level of government, municipal or otherwise?
Well, I already tried that in 2011,
Right. But you could try it again municipal, or what are you thinking?
My focus right now is to get the groundwork and the grassroots ready, because my experience since that time, I think I received 2% of the votes. And that seems to be the norm for anyone putting the amount of effort in that it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So before I turn my attention to anything like that, I first want to invest my energy in the groundwork that we need to do in our municipalities, in our towns, really getting the people active again. And when I go out and speak to people, the majority already knows that the government's corrupt and isn't working for the people anymore. So it's organizing all those like-minded people so that they realize how many of us there are. So then we can, as an organized body, move forward with taking back this country.
Yeah.
Can
I make a suggestion?
Yes.
If you want to do grassroots, school boards, target the school boards. You can get elected there pretty simple. You just need the support of the parents. And that's a good path towards municipal changes is the school board. And then once you're on there for a couple terms of stuff, counselor, then move your way up. Another option could be to find yourself a small town that needs a good mayor. That's another option because they need good people in small towns as well. And you may find, somebody's been there, especially during this COVID stuff, there's a lot of guys and gals that want to get out of that office and get replaced. So there's possibly a town or two near you that might take you. Those would be two grassroots options.
And that's what I want to impress in people's minds is the small towns are much easier to take back. And they make up the majority of the landmass of the country. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot easier to run these guys out of town with the proper notices of liability, for one thing, and then move in to replace them. Because if you go to a town council meeting, there's 0 to 2 people showing up, actually paying attention. The majority of Canadians are not politically active. All of this agenda is coming down from the global agenda and so on. And if we decide to get politically active, we don't need that many people. We need 20 to 100 active, organized people in every municipality going about with effective strategies to get back our country. And it's a lot easier to do that in the small towns. So yes, we can do it.
Right. And the globalists, they targeted the larger areas, the larger municipalities with the program you just revealed right there. They didn't take those to the small towns. What they've done to the small... Go ahead.
They did. They amalgamated them in.
Okay. So they're working off of the larger areas, the larger towns around them, or larger cities. Right. Okay. So getting in there will be a good way to help stop it and maybe reverse it at that point. It would be tough, like you're saying, to do it in a city, because they're heavily funded and they were heavily targeted, especially the people there. And that's one of the things I think you realize while you were giving that statement to the council, you're actually talking to the people who are part of this program. So it's going to be very tough to move that needle.
Some of them, I could tell I was saying something that helped a light bulb to go off. Oh, that's why we can't get the things passed and done that we want to have done. Mm-hmm. And others looked annoyed and angry. They just didn't want to hear what I was saying. And others looked like they knew what I was saying was true. And they were like, get her off. Yep. Get her out there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So that's something that Rick Abbott mentioned to us is there's basically a third, and a third. There's a third of the people who are totally aware of what's going on and they're in it. There's a third that completely are against it. And then there's that middle third who really don't know what's going on. Yeah. So maybe that's what you just described there.
And now I'm moving forward with notices of liability. So people keep asking, what can I do? So I say to everyone, you can easily do what I did. Everything I said, I listed in my Facebook post that's gone out. It's also listed on the YouTube video. I put all the information there, all the documents. at the end of every month, our town council lets delegates speak for 5 minutes, and it gets broadcasted. So the population that's listening can hear it. And you can go and speak. And then the next day I called Rebecca from Stand For Thee. That day I said, I'm doing this tonight. I need a notice of liability. I'm going to give them a verbal notice that they'll be receiving one. And the next day they did a live, and they had a whole 15-minute city notice of liability ready to go. And so does Take Action Canada, which looks very good as well. So I'm still deciding which one to go with. And we can do this all across the country right now. We can put our mayor and our council and
on notice. And
also don't forget to include the CAO of the corporation calling itself your city, because that's a private corporation, and that chief administrative officer is the one implementing the global agenda and basically giving grants to the city. So when I mentioned that $15,000 that they received this spring, if you look back to 1994, they've received millions from ICLEI. ICLEI Canada is the UN branch working with our municipalities across the country. And the ICLEI Canada, if you look at they're a network of members and experts working together through peer exchange and partnership to create systematic change. And this is what, if we want to win, we need to connect the network, members, experts, figuring out what works, implementing that across our vast nation, because we can't just show up in Ottawa every time there's a problem.
Right.
Canada's too big. We need to take back the country from the municipal level up.
Right.
And the conference for the municipalities happens every year, and their slogan at the bottom says, local action, federal results. So if we want to get our federal government back, we have to start at our municipalities.
Absolutely, and I believe you're right. And provincial level should be taking more action as well. So we have somebody like Danielle Smith who's talking some of the right talk, but not really taking the action just yet. But you're 100% right. The grassroots pressure, the people pressure is how she should be moving. Like, we should be pushing that up as well. So I'm going to jump to Chris quickly. So Chris, are you thinking anything like that when you move? You're going up in the bush. You're going to be out of the city. Have you thought about maybe getting a little bit politically active locally, supporting somebody or doing it yourself?
Yeah, so I agree. Like, we have to start with localism. It's got to start from the small towns. We are moving to a small town with a small population. That being said, I speak English, and the population mainly speaks French in the location we're going. Now, my wife speaks French, which is great. But no, I do believe that going up the local levels, like myself, maybe not, but I would rally behind others.
Support somebody.
So. And like I said, like Maggie said, like, small population is easier to get going. And the place we're moving already has a good support network. So it's just about getting there and just creating the network, unifying people, and
and supporting. If it's a good network, it's supporting it so it stays that way. And maybe find yourself a candidate. Maybe they already have a good candidate, and then supporting them as well. Right. And you're homeschooling, but you can still get involved with the local school system. So, and the parent council stuff.
100%. So I like, my answer right now, my head is scattered because, like, I have so many things in my head right now that I got to pay attention to. And so, like, I think of two things. So I see the global elite and the whole mechanism. I see it as one big wheel, and it's spinning regardless. Right. And it's not, for me, it's not about stopping the wheel because it's too big. It's about tilting it a degree. And when you tilt a degree, you're going to add 10 years, 20 years. It's going to change the latitude, right? It changes that. So there's things we can do like that. And then at the same time, to be concurrent. And for me personally, so my friend, Jeremy McKenzie, who you may or may not know.
Yeah, I've interviewed him. Do you like his interview?
I watched it. I forgot. I watched it.
It's okay. It's okay. I love you, brother.
So he's been debanked, right? And his girlfriend as well has been debanked.
Yes,
Now,
she has recently too.
In the position we're at as well, I have a new mortgage with Scotiabank. I have to prepare for the next few years ahead that not only could I lose my mortgage, that potentially if the CBDC does roll out, I may not have an income at some point. Now, it's probably looking 5 years out, but I have to get myself in a situation where I can be free of debt, helping those around me. We want to help those in the poverty, seniors. I mean, there's so many people that need help.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost my train of thought.
No problem. You were going to be setting up. You're going to be helping. We're talking about getting on school boards, and we're talking about helping the community at this stage.
Right. See, I mean, and it has to start with localism. Small towns. 100% agree with Maggie. I mean, Chris and I tried with Toronto to get to the mayor.
Yeah.
But I mean, as we saw, that
I had
was
him on too. Yeah, I had him on too,
I mean,
and he's a good guy.
It would have been great if he won. I mean, but who they have now is, well, anyways.
It's okay. It's okay. No, it was stacked against him. The media definitely did not give him a fair shake. And that's something that I'm going to go to next. So as we're talking about taking back control from the grassroots up, we are not just fighting the politicians and some people who don't know what's going on. We're also fighting the media because they will absolutely come out against you. That's well established. It's well controlled. It's well funded. So as you saw with Chris Sky, every little single thing that he may have possibly ever did that could rub somebody the wrong way, they amplified that. All the work that he actually did, which was great. And I caught him on an interview. His interview with me, he was delivering groceries to a single mother because she called out to him and asked for help. That didn't make the media at all either. So you're going to be against that machine as well. So another option, another grassroots option, which is available to all of us, is stuff like this podcast, getting out there once a week, getting together, talking, continuing to let people know how things are going. That's another way to build up a base. Would you consider doing that? We got people like Alex Cabana. We got people like me, Zach Schmidt. There's a lot of people out there who are doing podcasts, Jeremy McKenzie, who are doing podcasts and getting their voice out. Would you consider getting involved in something like that?
Of course. I mean, I think for me, I want to get, like right now we're busy. We want to sell this place, move. I feel like wherever I end up, as long as I can find someone who's technical that can help me out with the, like starting the foundation.
I will help you in a heartbeat.
I wanted to do a YouTube video or channel like years ago because with the bullshit that was going on, but I just I couldn't set it myself. I just got determined, like someone else will do it.
Consider that taken care of. Let's consider you. Let's say we got you in front of a camera and everything else is taken care of. All we need you to do is talk for an hour about your week. Would you do that?
Probably.
Because it would be interesting to hear your journey.
Sounds good. Yeah. I did want to go back to about you mentioning the mainstream media. So after the convoy, so after the convoy, I'm sure you know of James Topp. Yeah. So we spent.
He will be on when he comes up from his. He's taking a break right now. He's got some stuff to work on. When he comes back up, he's going to be doing the rounds. Yeah.
We spent the entire summer with him, and I mean, and watching the media slander this guy who's he deployed 4 or 5 times. He was a decorated master warrant officer. He'd been with the RCMP. Like this guy is the fittest machine that you want in the military, and they're kicking him out. And he was trying to raise awareness, and the media's coming out and slandering him, and it's just it was sad, but expected of the mainstream media too. I don't know who actually still pays attention to that and watches it. I don't understand.
A lot of people who haven't changed the channel, they completely believe it, and it's always available. So there's a good chunk of people who just don't get past the is this true stage because they don't have anything else to compare it to. Lots of people do. But this is why I'm trying to push this kind of thing. With the podcast, Canadians to Canadians, we cut out the middleman. And, we don't get it all right. Sometimes we have to have corrections. But I think people like you, for example, I think you would do a great show of setting up your new place. So you're just setting up a new homestead.
You're cutting out. Sorry, I can't hear you.
No problem. What I'm suggesting, and maybe we can watch this back a little bit later, is if you had a show that would show how you're setting up your new life, and you just gave us an update once a week and how is Chris doing, people would tune into that because people would want to know how you're doing. And you might be able to assist them on, hey, this is what I did with my homeschooling. Here's what I did with my homesteading. Just little updates as you're progressing. I think people would like that.
No, and I do like taking a second as well, like doing that as well would also better myself, because I mean, public speaking and all that. And if I do want to get on a local level, I know I have to get uncomfortable. I have to get in positions like this that I don't enjoy doing this one bit. But I know
Me
the
either.
more I
I'm
practice,
an
the better.
introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm just doing this for Canada.
Yeah, me too. I can't stand doing this, but I think over time, for sure, I could do that.
Absolutely, and I'd help you on that in any way I could, for sure.
Okay.
And then Maggie, the same question: if you were able to have everything taken care of, the tech, all that kind of stuff is not a problem, would you consider doing something? Because for me, I would call it Maggie's line, where you're telling us where your line is all the time and how you're fighting with your line. I would watch that.
I'm still working on getting everything taken care of, but I would love to do that. I speak to amazing people every week, and every time I think I really need to get this conversation out there, because the people I talk to, they're solution focused. They have the right ideas, and if we could all hear it, then we would be able to implement that. But maybe I can send them your way for now while I get myself sorted out. And yeah, I would love nothing more. And that's why I created the newsletters, because then I could at least capture the big ideas, boil it down into simple terms, and put it out for the people. And so that's what I've been trying to do.
Absolutely. And I got a few options for you. So every week I do a cross Canada, coast to coast thing, where we go from each region and we get a news update from that region. So you're Ontario, right? So we can get you in for the Ontario one once a week, where you can tell us what's going on in Peterborough, Pickering, your area. Then we do that across Canada. So if you watch the entire 3-hour show, you get Canadian news from Canadians. So that's every week that I do that one. And another option I can do with you is, from time to time, I bring in co-hosts on subjects. So if you have somebody who you think would do a good interview, you can co-host it with me. So this is what Maggie May does. So Jeremy's girlfriend, Gov Corrupt in Quebec, he's a co-host as well sometimes. His name's Kevin. He's a really good guy. And both of them are basically saying the same thing. I want a little bit more practice and get more comfortable with it. So if you have a friend or two that you want to bring on and you think can make a good interview, you could co-host that with me and get more comfortable with that. And same thing with you, Chris. If you want to bring on a friend that you met, maybe the guys who drove you around or something, we could do the same thing if you want to get more comfortable coming on.
Yeah, sounds good.
That would be amazing.
So I'll reach out for you. Well, then let's get you set up for the next Wednesday so I can put you down for Ontario. I'll tell you the exact time and we'll do that. And Chris, what province are you in without telling us exactly where you are? I think you said New Brunswick.
New Brunswick.
Right. Well, Morgan May, she does the Maritimes with us. So I'll connect with her and maybe she'll bring you on one of her Maritime episodes and you can tell us about what's going on for like 5-10 minutes and that kind of thing. You be for that?
We can do that.
Okay, cool. Look at that. I'm already recruiting people for our Wednesday show. But let's do that because I'm helping other people too. Rob Anders, who was an MP for 18 years, co-founder of the Conservative Party of Canada. So he's a conservative out here in Alberta. He's doing the same thing. He's going to be setting up a show. Eva Chippewick, who's a lawyer out in Alberta. She's dealing with, she's the one who cross-examined Trudeau. So you guys would have saw her during the POEC days. She's looking at doing a podcast as well. Because I think what we have to do, one of the first steps here, Maggie and Chris, is we got to replace the media. And we got to do a good job at replacing the media. Because they're the ones who are supposed to let the public know what's going on with the government. So when they're not doing their job, this is what happens. People have no idea what's going on with their government. At least most of them don't. So if we could put together Canadians talking to Canadians, I think we'll have a much better chance on doing that grassroots effort. So sorry if I seem a little pushy, but I think you both have excellent voices, and I think you both would be able to keep a crowd and help educate them. So I'm going to ask my chat, would you guys watch Maggie's show, Maggie Line, whatever we end up calling it, or she calls it? And would you watch Chris set up a new life and check out what's going on with him routinely? I know Alex Cabana is in the chat today, so I'm sure he would be quite excited about doing that as well, because this is what we're doing. We're bringing out good people and we're having good conversations. So I would encourage you to do that. Now I am going to wrap up because I can tell we're getting near the end here, and we've kind of gone through all of our questions. But I do have a lot of questions from the chat, and the chat wants to say some things to you guys. So if you don't mind, I'll take you through that. And Chris, how are you doing? You're holding up good?
Good. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent, bud. So I'm going to go with Carly. So this looks like it's for Chris. So I'll bring it up for Chris. Chris Deering, thank you for your service. I am grateful you were able to recover as fast as you have. So this is from Carly Simmons on YouTube. Thank you, Carly. Yeah. And that was pretty amazing how quickly you did recover. You mentioned that you were able to do it in months. So you were healthy and you were able to, take that rehab seriously and do a good job there.
Yeah. Let me remind people, the first thing about Pain Club, you don't talk about pain.
That's right. And the same thing's true for tattoos. I've had tattoos and you don't think about it and it's fine. But other people, when they get all wrapped up into it, they squeal and scream. Brenda, what does Brenda say here? I did see on live stream a woman ask an officer if he was proud of himself. He started tearing up, said no, took off his shield and left. Brenda, if you can find that video, we would love to see that. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly what Maggie was trying to do. So Maggie, you want to maybe comment to Brenda here?
Absolutely. I think the Emergency Act, they kept increasing the Emergency Act because the police weren't seeing any criminal activity to enforce any laws to remove us. And so they called the Emergency Act for Ottawa and brought in more people, but there was nothing they could do because we weren't doing anything wrong, and the police saw that. And then they did the Ontario one just to create that hype, right? And then bring in more officers, hoping that they could get them to do more, but they couldn't, because when they were there, they saw for themselves that we weren't doing anything unlawful that we could be arrested or removed for. And we were kind and polite and loving to the police. That was our code while we were there, our unspoken code, that we were going to be as peaceful and responsible and loving as we could. And then when they did the big one, they literally shipped police in from all across the country, landed them that night, put them on the ground with their orders, moved them forward, and then switched them out before their hearts would kick in and say, what are we doing here? Yeah. And that's what I think the Emergency Act was called for, because they, given enough time, the officers would have seen for themselves for the most part. And that's why at the end they put the riot police or whoever they were in the front against the people, because they knew that they would just do their job. And but a lot of them did have heart. Like I said, he dropped a tear. They knew we were right. The day that the Emergency Act was called, somebody brought thousands of roses into Ottawa and handed them out to the police. And when I arrived that day, the streets were covered in roses everywhere. So we did a great job. And my heart goes out to the police, because that was probably quite traumatic for many of them as well.
If I could jump into something?
Yes, please.
Just the one thing I found, as Maggie was saying, as the violence escalated from the police during those 2 days, it got even more peaceful from the protesters as the violence went on. It was incredible. It was it was amazing.
That sounds very Canadian, because we're not there to have violence. So if violence is brought to us, we're going to respond with peace. Yeah, absolutely. And then Maggie, we actually have a question here for you from Eleanor from YouTube.
Chris.
I know. I'm doing my best to move this on, because this could be very emotional for us, especially you two. Eleanor says, does Maggie feel safe where she is, or do you plan to move away? Now you had that bomb threat. You had, you're dealing with a Peterborough 15-minute city. I'm sure you're in ward something.
I will move when I'm called to move. Right now, I do feel this is a mission that has a certain level of protection over it, and I'll be protected here. As long as I feel safe here, I will stay. And I would love to go to a cabin in the woods and I'm making plans to. I'll be okay. My life.
You'll be okay.
Yeah, my life is protected and guided, and I'll be okay. But thank you for asking.
God bless you, and we do agree with that. And if you ever get the itch or you hear a calling and it says Alberta, you know where to go.
I have a lot of friends around the country, so I'll be okay.
yeah. And if you just want to go for a little while and just hop around, we would have you as well too.
And I'm also planning. I have a place in Mexico as well, and Central America. I went to a conference in Mexico with like-minded people from around the world. So, and I've put my affairs in order with legal documentation, and even taking the next step to protect all of my assets into a trust. So if they come after me like they would a normal person, they will not be able to get through as quickly as they would normally get to somebody. So, like I said, there's things we can do to protect ourselves.
Well, I want you to stay because you're one of the good ones, and I would hate to see the brain drain happen. This is one of the challenges when the people smarten up and they move away from the cities or move away. They're also leaving behind a concentration of not smart people because all the smart ones are leaving. So I see what your journey is right now. You're going to stay in the lion's den for a little bit longer while you still feel safe and continue to bring that fight to them.
And I like just to go to Mexico because it helps my spirit to recharge, and the energy there is more relaxed. Canada has a very dark, we're dealing with a lot of stuff here in Canada. So I do recommend people take time to relax and enjoy life and enjoy freedom, because that's what it's all about. We need to be enjoying our lives, enjoying our families. And that's, I find in those moments where I can relax, that's where the good ideas come. And the good ideas, when we speak them out loud, like we're doing here tonight, that's what changes everything. So yeah. And
then people like Cindy reach out to you and says, Maggie, thank you for standing up for all of us. Big strong arm. She appreciates that for sure. Thank you very much, Cindy. And Cindy also wanted to let you know, always moving forward, good for you, Maggie. So she's listening very carefully to your path, and she agrees with you. Just keep moving forward, and as long as you feel safe, you're doing the right thing. And then Chris wants to let you both know, good for you guys, and thank you for putting your faces and time towards sharing such necessary topics. This is what I think is what we're going to get out of tonight, is we got a lot more detail out of both of you about what happened that wasn't on the record and we didn't know about. So thank you both for sharing all of that. And thank you, Chris, for your comment. And then we also have some for you, our soldier. Reluctant Optimist. That's a wonderful name. Reluctant Optimist. Love you, Chris. Reluctant loves you. I don't think that's the reluctant part, but Reluctant loves you.
Well.
Yeah. And then Charlie C., which is a vet, by the way, in Ottawa. She's an amazing woman. Respect, Chris. Cheers, brother.
Thanks.
Lots of respect for you. And then Island Jason, who's out in BC. He's one of our newer followers ever since we had Jeremy on. He's been watching basically every episode, and he's also going to be on our Canada Coast to Coast thing. So you'll catch him on Wednesday as well. He says, thanks for sharing, Chris and Maggie. And I think this was the big takeaway, was we got to hear more about what happened to you and your story. And then, of course, Dylan wants to let you know, Chris, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thanks.
No problem. And that's probably Klaus trying to interrupt there, Maggie. He has your number, maybe. He's just trying to interrupt there. But thank you very much, Chris, for that. And let's see what we got here. And then we got one more from Dylan. Thank you, Chris. Oh, Jason, Chris, and Maggie. And then the brotherhood there. So thank you very much, Dylan. I do appreciate it. And most importantly, I appreciate both of you for being able to make some time. Peter makes one more comment here. Jason has built, in my honest opinion, the best interview opinion channel on YouTube. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. We need dynamic and eloquent people to add oxygen to the discussion. Chris and Maggie are both amazing voices and creative forces. I agree with you, Peter, and I think my chat was pretty clear. They would watch your show. So if you guys want to help and we want to do some co-hosting, we want to get you on for a little bit, get your feet wet, get comfortable with it, happy to. But on that note, I think unless you guys want to bring up anything that we didn't cover, If there's another video or something you want to share, if there's anything else that you didn't cover, we'll go ahead and let you get back to your evening. We'll start with you, Chris, if there's anything that you want to add.
Sure. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on the show. And I look forward to starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or something. Thank you for that. Also, for those watching, continue to watch Jason. He's got great content. Tune into Patriot Propaganda because they have great stuff as well. Alex and his wife Megan are doing great work. And like my friend Saxon Murray says, it's a great way to protest your government is to get off the services and be less dependent on the state. So just be more independent and just be better for you and your family. And don't forget, take a cold shower. It helps. That's it.
Cold shower, yeah, will help with the pain and also help with keeping your mind straight.
Yep.
And make sure you tune in on Monday. There's an announcement with Alex. He'll be announcing something on Monday. So make sure you tune in for that one. And then right back to you, Maggie. Do you want to have any final comments, or did we miss anything that you wanted to add?
Again, thank you so much, Jason, for what you're doing. I would love to be able to work with you in the future, and I have a lot of people that I have great ideas that we can get out there. I'm moving, if people want to know more about the ideas that I'm sharing, I am moving my newsletter to WordPress. It will be called The Gathering 2030. So instead of Agenda 2030, it's The Gathering 2030. And I'm gathering as many of the best effective ideas and strategies for the people across the country who want their freedom back. So, and want to get our country back and get people like you elected. And I'm so glad that you're running for that election as an independent. And that is definitely the next step forward in that avenue that needs to be addressed as well. So thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure. It's the toughest road, as you know, running. You got 2%. It's the toughest road. But I think we have the time to connect to enough people. I got to reach 40,000 ears. And when I do that, I think people will understand that this is the type of MPs you want, the type that will connect to you. And by the way, my entire plan is, for the people who are listening, is to continue this stream as an MP. So if I have meetings with people, it would be on the stream. I'll have a body cam. Every place I can, other than the bathroom, you will see my entire MP life, because I believe that's the transparency we need. So you'll see who I speak to, what we're talking about, and everything that can be streamed will be streamed. And hopefully that encourages the others to do the same thing. But I think you're going to see a lot of video of me banging on doors that they won't open because they say liberal on them. But that might be the case. And, you know, if that's the case, that's the case. But thank you very much for that support, Maggie. It's a long road. It's the hardest road. The PPC offered me the path, but that's party politics. And I have a whole video on why I said no to them. But you can check that out. I called it Federal Candidate. You'll find it in my library. But thank you all very much for that. Yeah, for sure. And I think the conversation is what really needs to happen, because boy, did I learn a lot about you both today. I know the audience did as well. And you got to fill in a bunch of the holes that we had, like what happened to you after? What did you have to go through? What is your path forward? We got to learn all of that today. So I do appreciate that. And then Chris, absolutely. You're in my prayers. Your service was great. And then Maggie, you're an inspiration. There's going to be so many people, young, old, male, female, looking up to you. Because you're staying in the den and you know it, and you feel that that's your path. So God bless you on that one. And I appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll let you get back to your evenings, and we will get you both on at some time in the future, and we'll make this happen. For sure on Wednesday, if you both are interested, we'll get you both on Wednesday. Is that a thumbs up from both of you?
Yep.
Look at that. We're building this team. Canada, we rock. Canada. Well, I love you both very much. Canada loves you both very much. Even the haters love you, and they just don't know it yet. You guys were there for them, even the haters. You stood up for them. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night to you both. We'll talk.
Good night,
Thanks,
Chris.
Jason.
Good to
Thanks.
see you again.
Good seeing you again, Maggie. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Another reunion. We'll do this again. Take care. Alberta loves you. Well, folks, my heart is full. It's full. These are amazing people. They both understand what to do. Maggie is tuned in, okay? You stay connected to this channel, stay subscribed, do all of that kind of stuff. because Agenda 2030 is real. Maggie knows fully about it, and there'll be a lot more conversations around that. And also stay tuned, because as part of my mission, I'm trying to get more podcasters, trying to get more voices. This isn't a thing that we're trying to protect from like a business standpoint. I think the best way to get Canada forward is to replace the media. You replace the media, then you can replace your government, because then your people actually hear from you and they actually hear what's going on. There we go. Sorry, I had to mute that. That's the best way, I think, to crack into the government in the elections, is to go to the media, fix the media, get more information out, and get support in the elections. That's one good way to do it. I do want to say thank you to everybody that gave a bunch of comments here. Thank you for us. Thank you very much, Dylan, on that one. Awesome. I love these two, Jason. So do I. So do I. And we have a lot more good guests coming up too. What happens is when I interview somebody like, say, Bridget, 2 or 3 more people come out of the woodwork. So Chris Barber has already connected. You'll be seeing him soon, and there'll be more. There'll be more. But the goal is to get all of the POEC witnesses, and then we'll start working on the NCI witnesses. We're going to get all of these voices that are not heard. We're going to get them on here. So thank you, Dylan, for that. Kudos. Do appreciate it. Janet says, Jason, you do a great job. Thank you, Janet. I do appreciate those comments. And look, I'm an introvert. It might be a surprise for some of you right now, but I'm an introvert, much like Chris. This doesn't make me comfortable, but the desire, my goal, my mission to get in there and reform the laws and do the lawmaker's job properly is strong enough for me that I can get past anything. So thank you all very much, Janet. I do appreciate these comments. Facebook is growing really fast, so share away, share away. Brenda says, God bless. Thank you very much, Brenda. And I believe he has. He's brought us all together, including you, Brenda. So I believe he has. Ellen says, thank you both so much for your time tonight. Yeah, and you could tell Chris was getting uncomfortable. He warned me ahead of time, because he has to do that. He has chronic pain. So he did let me know ahead of time. I might have to take a break, or we may have to cut it short. He didn't. He checked with him a couple of times. He was good to go. So he's still a soldier. He's still a trooper. And yeah, thank you both very much for your time. It's Friday. You might want to be doing other things, but thank you for sharing it with us tonight. Miss Kitty says, thank you, Jason. Your shows are so valuable. Thank you very much, Miss Kitty. I appreciate that. Share it, like it, subscribe, let everybody know. Pick an episode that you think that might interest them, and then they'll come and check out the other ones. My episodes are not so time sensitive, because they're conversations with people. So they still work a week or so later. So go ahead and share them and go back to the catalog. I think you'll find a lot of good topics that you would enjoy. Michael says, awesome interviews. Thank you. Hey, Michael, thank you so much. From Facebook, too. And you got a honk truck. Right on, man. Truckers. If you didn't catch Bridget Belton, catch it. She gave us a full interview from her truck yesterday. It was an awesome interview. It's one of my favorites. In fact, I have a lot of favorites. It's tough to not. It's kind of like children. They all are getting really good. Doreen says, good interview. Thanks. Thank you. Or very good interview. Thank you very much, Doreen. Very good comment. I appreciate that. Island Jason, a new friend, like he's turned into a big brother. Jason, you keep delivering. Thanks again. Just like the truckers. Hong Kong. Let's get this delivery done. I'm still on Bridget. Like I haven't fully made it through the interview again, because I do watch them a second time. I haven't made it all the way through, but boy, did we have a good time. There's a lot of laughing out of that lady. And she's been all over Twitter today too. It was fun. Jason, you're on fire, Jason. Oh, sorry. You were on fire, Jason. Great show yet again. Oh, it feels like it. Can you see a little bit of sweat? Because it is warm in here. But thank you very much, Tammy. I do appreciate it. And you were one of my favorite interviews, too. So if you haven't seen the Tammy Croft interview, check it out. Because, again, we're Canadians talking to Canadians, and she's one heck of a Canadian. And then Yendor says, Jason, the prayers this morning was unexpected. Yeah, so what you're referring to is we had Tony's prayer. So Tony is one of the Coots 4, and he wrote a prayer, and he shared it with us. So Granny shared it with me, and I first asked Granny to go ahead and give us the prayer, but she asked me to go ahead and do it, so I did. And yes, 2 minutes. And Yendor, I think what we're going to do is we'll re-record that and release it in some way so that people can go ahead and hear Tony's prayer. They can't hear it from him yet, so maybe one day we'll re-record it with him. But it's quite the touching prayer. And yeah, I'm a religious guy. I do the church thing. I'm I'm an usher. Totally love my faith, and I've turned to it many times. And it's a very good, strong rock to have and to develop. But yeah, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And just appreciate you all. You are all lovely people. I'm just going to check for last comments here. Thank you from Chris. He even gave me a private message there. Thank you, Jason. No, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that a lot, buddy. And I will be talking to you guys soon. All right, folks. Well, 2.5 hours. It was a really good interview. And it's now time to get on with our evening. Tomorrow, I do have a special interview. I don't normally do Saturdays, but when you get a certain guest and you can get them, you get them. And tomorrow it's going to be Pastor Rob and Melissa McKee from the Bikers Church. So you heard the story how it was Maggie who ran into the Bikers Church at the tow yard, and they just opened up and gave her a ride. These are amazing people, and we're going to hear from the pastor, Rob, and Melissa McKee tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. I'll be putting it up right after this show. You can find it on Twitter. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Rumble. It's going to be up shortly, but it'll be tomorrow at a special time, which is 2 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be right before dinner. You get to check them out. Well, on that note, everybody, you know how I feel about you. I love you all. And, the Josh, what was that one? What Josh Alexander shop? Oh, great. So we can get to Save Canada hats. So Josh Alexander's shop restocked. I'm going to be placing an order in. You'll see a Save Canada hat on the set. And Bridget also had restocked on her 10/7 hoodies and t-shirts. So go check her Twitter out. You can place an order now. She's taking those now. Support these people who are putting together this stuff to get us the cool merch to share, because the messages are important, and it also helps support them. So good that Josh Alexander and team have more hats in, and go and get one. I'm going to get one, maybe two. But on that note, you know how I feel about you all. I love you all very much, and God bless.